Hello, wackos. Welcome to Without a Country. I am Corinne Fisher, and this is Sir Alfred Hitchcock. Say hello to the fans. Fans of you. Hello. Alfred's a rescue from Pup Stars, guys. If you don't remember, that's a rescue here in New York City. He's a good boy. All right, he's here. We are pre-recording this on Sunday, July 20th, just so you guys know, because it's vacation season. So, as you know, I have banned myself from vacations for the rest of the summer, but all the producers and engineers who work on this show are actually going to simultaneously be on vacation next week. Harrington's on his honeymoon, and then AJ in the booth, he's going to be on vacation as well. So we're just pre-recording this, but we went as late as we possibly could before departures, just to make it the most up to date for you. And we, it was literally no problem to put together a full slate of news stories, even though we recorded I guess it was like 5 days ago, right? So here we are. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you. Alfred will be helping steer this ship today. Alfred had a big weekend. A friend of mine just adopted their first dog, also from Pup Stars, shout out. And they had a little play date for the first time, and it was very, very cute. And, just a fun time. I'm never more social than I am in the dog park. I'll talk to anyone in the dog park. I talk to no one outside the dog park. That's just a little bit about me. Let's give a quick shout out to our dictator, Christopher Fungi. Hello. Again, it's not Fan Guy. That was just me not, I guess knowing about French Louisiana pronunciation. And now I know. So that's better. And shout out to our newest cutie, Tatiana Gracina. Thank you so much for joining us. If you want to become a patron, you can head over to patreon.com/withoutacountry, and you get an exclusive video news story every single week. So that's what is it, like 80 extra minutes most times of content every single week for as little as $6 a month. And you help to produce the show. You help to pay for all the subscriptions. You help to pay the producers, engineers, anyone working on the show. That's what it's all going back into the show. So thank you so much for being a part of it. I appreciate that very much. What did I do this weekend? Last night I Know What You Did Last Summer. Definitely the film I was most excited to see this summer. The movies have been very dry lately. I've been looking to go to the movies. I've been itching to go to the movies. Nothing good has been playing. But I liked Final Destination, but I wasn't itching to see it. And then I Know What You Did Last Summer. That's a movie that when I saw they were doing a remake, I literally gasped. I think it was because I Know What You Did Last Summer, the original, came out at one of the happiest times in my life. 1997. That was a good year. Middle school for me, middle school was a good ass time. We had the Spice Girls, we had NSYNC, the Backstreet Boys, we had great, Cruel Intentions. It was just a really incredible time for me and personally. So I think I have really good memories of that. Cruel Intentions, I think I was in early high school by then. I can't remember. Yeah, maybe it was my first year of high school. I can't remember what season it came out in. It was 1999 though. But it's all these stars, Reese Witherspoon, Ryan Phillippe, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Jennifer Love Hewitt, Freddie Prinze Jr., all these icons that were in films. And it was just really good. And also, these movie theaters have been getting me with the merch. If we want to talk about capitalism at its absolute best, getting your friend Corinne Fisher, this new thing that they've done where they just make, cheaply produced plastic and metal accoutrement that you can purchase when you're at the concession stand, you got me hook, line, and sinker. And no pun intended, because when we're talking about I Know What You Did Last Summer, there is a fisherman theme, if anyone's seen the first one. No spoilers. Sorry if you didn't get around to watching it. It came out in 1997. But yeah, so I went and I was like, okay, Corinne, you're going to keep it under control, right? You're going to keep it under control. I had reviewed the merch previously, and I knew what they were going to be offering. Obviously, like AMC and Regal, they do different types of merch a lot of times. I'm a Regal gal. I'm a Crown Club member. So I said, what is my Regal offering? I had my heart set on the white I Know What You Did Last Summer cup, which, spoiler alert, turns red when you put cold soda in it, like blood. Even the woman at the concession stand was like, wow. She's like, oh, you're the first person I'm doing this for. And I was like, okay, humble brag. And she was like, this was really cool. I might have to get one myself. And I said, yes. And then they put the lid on, and you get a choice of 2 toppers. You can either have like the full fisherman in his fisherman slicker, or you can have just the bloody hook. And she said, which one would you like? And I said, hook. She laughed. I said, hook, please. And then she rings it up, and it was like, I don't know, like $34.99 or something. And I was like, that's outrageous for a cup. Was I still going to pay it? 100%. But was I going to be like, I don't feel good about this? Also, yes. And then the manager comes over, and he was like, oh, no, you can't buy anything separately. It's when the $34.99 is you get everything. So you get 2 cups. You get the Fisherman Slicker black cup, and you get the white cup with the bloody hook. But they'll let you have whichever topper, even though I think that's the way it's supposed to go. And then you get this like tin tackle box and popcorn in it. Or you can have them give it to you separately in a bag so you don't damage the goods, which is what I did. And so I got all of that. I mean, it looks like every time I go to concessions, it looks like I fully went shopping. And I'm also, there was a big ass line. It's a Saturday night. I'm standing there for like 15 minutes. That being said, it made me very happy. And it's hard because you have to make this commitment before you've even seen the film. Maybe I'm going to see the film and I'm going to hate it. I loved the film, though. I feel like it was a very, very good job at a remake. Or no, it's not even a remake. It has the same title, but it's not a remake. It's I would say, continuation of the story. And so, a sequel, really, but I don't know why it has the same exact name. I don't read a lot about movies before I go into them. For me, that just ruins it and makes me disappointed. But all I'll say for now is it gave me everything that I want from kind of like the continuation of a brand. It wasn't trying to be the old thing, but it was respectful of it. It paid homage to it. It celebrated what was and left an ellipses for what will be. That's my review of I Know What You Did Last Summer. And listen, I'm a horror gal, but I Know What You Did Last Summer is a different genre. It's not prime horror. To me, it's teen thriller, which is teen thriller. So it's in that similar category of Scream. Like Scream, I don't look at it as like, oh my God, an amazing horror movie. I look at Scream as an excellent example of a teen thriller. And that's all that you can ask from a teen thriller. So really enjoyed it. 2 thumbs up in my opinion. And I have not been loving movies that I've been seeing lately. So it was very satisfactory for me. And that's all we'll talk about for personal. And let's move on to the news. Enemy of the state this week. I didn't even have time to get angry at someone else this week.
Enemy of the state.
I think the enemy of the state this week. Who with AJ? Have you thought of anyone who is your enemy of the state this week? In politics, has anyone stuck out for you? Really putting the producer on the spot. He definitely hasn't thought about it. I could tell by the dead silence that we're experiencing right now. Your mic's not on. If it looks like you were talking.
Oh no, nothing came to mind.
Wow, we all waited for that. Worst person in politics this week. Let me see. I want to see if the internet told me anyone. They're just giving me the worst people in Trump's orbit. All right, maybe we'll make a decision afterwards because there was no one that stuck out to me yet so far this week. I also have a couple less days than usual. I mean, it's the same. It's like the same people. Oh, you know what? I actually have a good idea for the enemy of the state. Okay. So this is my idea. I didn't know how to fit this into the show, and this is actually the perfect way. I'm just realizing now. So my enemy of the state this week is someone who has been an ongoing enemy of the state that we've talked about without talking about by name, right? So you know how, every now and then I'll bring up something and I'm like, I can't believe this is something that the White House actually posted, or like this meme was incredibly racist and it came directly from the White House account, or like there'll be some, just really bad behavior. Well, here's why, Kevin, which is a really interesting social media account to follow. It's by Kevin Ortega Rojas, and a lot of times it's an Instagram account that is specifically focusing on news stories that affect Black, Brown, and LGBTQ people. Even though it's left leaning, obviously I still highly encourage you to fact check everything. I highly encourage you, while you can learn about news stories from Instagram, please take it that next step further and go on and read an article or cross check it so that you're getting actually some, other piece of information, or some place that actually has to follow standards of journalistic integrity. Please make sure that you're getting, fact checking, stuff before you're reposting it. It really only takes 5 minutes of your time to find out if it's something that's real. And it's really important because in this age of misinformation, we're doing ourselves no service, and we're at each other's throats sometimes for no reason at all. So this article, and it came out today, it says, or this post, it's certainly not an article, it says, meet the gay man behind all of the White House's viral racist content. And it's just a little profile on this guy. I'll show you right here. This is who it is. It's just like a kind of a regular looking white dude, but he is a gay man. They did feel the need to point that out. And I think that's because this is, LGBTQ specific content. And it said, this is William Billy McLaughlin. He's the gay man behind the official White House Instagram page. The former NRA spokesperson, Billy now serves as the director of digital content for the White House. He is paid by American taxpayers, so us, to create racist, dishonest content for social media. And then on his lunch breaks, he carries his gun to the gym to pose for pictures, which is totally normal. I mean, I'm not guessing that, I'm guessing that he doesn't do it, every single day. But they do feature this picture of him with a gun at the gym. It says, since day one, the Trump administration has targeted and attacked the LGBTQ community from cutting health research to shutting down the 988 suicide line program. McLaughlin has championed every step. And I mean, I think, this is kind of who he always has been. Just because you're gay doesn't mean that you're a good person or even a liberal, That's a mistake that I think the left has made. It's a mistake the left made with Black Americans, assuming that they will always be liberal, and I think that is, I think that's a problem with the left. We think that anyone who in our opinions rights we've been fighting for is also a liberal, because I think oftentimes the left sees, as the right does, sees many of these minority groups as pawns to win a political game instead of full, whole, complex people who have their own points of view, perspectives, and are coming at things from the life that they have lived and experienced. And just as much as it angers us when the right does that, when the right does things like weaponizing trans people or something to win an election, do not think that the left doesn't do that as well. The left consistently, and we talked about it on this show a lot, about how we never hear more about the needs, wants, and votes of Black Americans than when it's during voting time. And I think if we were as concerned with the needs of Black Americans when it wasn't time to head to the polls, that we'd have a country that was a lot more equal and just. But unfortunately, the left, who claims to be, so forward thinking, and I'm talking about the left, meaning the Democratic Party or the left establishment, not, every individual person. There are some people who have jobs where they're, thinking about all these things all the time, but it's I don't know. I also think people think about it when it's convenient for them or when it's time for them to look good. And, myself included, which is why I've made such a commitment to the show and talk about the same things time and time again. Try to remind myself these are things that we need to be talking about all the time. And that's a lot of my problem with why I'm so angry about how much attention the Epstein case is getting, not because what happened wasn't disgusting and that rich people shouldn't be held accountable 100%, but it's just this is a flashier story. And I just think that there are other problems in this country that have always been here and that have never gone away. Certainly the racism being one of the standout issues, and how in this country from the get, we continuously find ways structurally to keep people of color and specifically Black people behind, but also just in general, the separation between rich people and poor people, and pretending that a lot of other issues are what separates us when it's really a bunch of billionaires, in this long game against the rest of us. So then it goes on to show this article that he wrote for the Washington Post in, what year was this? Let me see what, not super recently, but a couple years ago, maybe 5 years ago, maybe a little bit more, in the Washington Post. It was gay. The title was "I'm Gay and Work for the NRA. Big Deal." So, this is someone who was trying to be like a flashy contrarian, like all these different fucking characters that we see on the left and the right, honestly. I mean, sorry, the right and the left, honestly. There was this White House post that said ICE swiped right on a woman who I guess was detained by ICE. That was this guy's handiwork. This guy crying apparently because of people who were undocumented. Representative Jimmy Gomez saying they're just strawberry pickers. I don't know. All these memes that have been really bothering us as a country were done by this same guy. So my enemy of the state this week definitely has to be this gentleman, Billy McLaughlin. So that is the enemy of the state this week. And I think that was a good way to fit that in because I wanted to talk about it, but I didn't know why, because it wasn't actually an article. Alfred, you're not being a good co-host right now. I got to be honest. Crying at the door while we're trying to make a show, not the best co-hosting. Come here, buddy. All right. Well, I tried. It was the weekend. I didn't want to leave him alone at my apartment, and now I'm paying for it. All right, let's get right into municipal politics right now. My mom sent me an email this morning asking me if I was paying attention to the Minneapolis, I don't know why that was so hard for me to say, the Minneapolis mayor's race. And I had not, but I read up on it, and it's something that is going to go along with the success that we saw with Zoran Mamdani here in New York City. As I said, I knew I was going to see a ripple effect in politics after his win of the Democratic primary. And this is a really great example what is happening right now in the Minneapolis mayor's race. Let me just punch this in so I can get access to this article real quick. All right. Truly the worst internet in town somehow here. All right. Let's see. All right. So this is from the Star Tribune, which, not my number one look for politics. But again, you have to dig a little deeper when you're doing local politics. So this is from the Minnesota Star Tribune. Oh, sorry, I have to grab my dog. Alfred, come on. You're not making a great cause for people to want to adopt a pet. Come here. Come here. No dogs were harmed in the making of this episode. My dog is a drama king, and he makes yelping sounds when truly nothing bad has happened to him. Okay, so this is from the Minneapolis Star Tribune. It says Minneapolis DFL convention endorses Democratic Socialist Omar Fattah for mayor over Jacob Frey. Incumbent Frey's campaign said he'll appeal Fattah's Saturday victory in the party's mayoral endorsement. And again, sorry if I am mispronouncing anyone's last name. I've just read all of this. So the Democratic Party of Minnesota's largest city has endorsed a Democratic socialist over a two-term incumbent mayor. In my opinion, mayors should only have 2 terms like presidents, but that's a whole different story that we can talk about at a different time. According to Minneapolis DFL convention co-chair Ann Friedrich, State Senator Omar Fattah won at least 60% of the Minneapolis DFL delegate vote Saturday, defeating Mayor Jacob Frey and the party's first endorsement of a mayoral candidate in 16 years, according to an initial announcement by Friedrich. Fattah, can you look up that pronunciation, AJ? Won by a clear visual vote of delegates holding up their badges. Many supporters of Frey were visibly absent from the floor at the time of the vote. There were quorum challenges, attempts to question the validity of the endorsement vote afterward, and the Frey campaign said it plans to appeal to the state party. Party officials invited Fattah to the stage at the end of the night to address the remaining delegates. Today, we witnessed a rejection of politics as usual, a rejection of the inhumane way we have been treating our unhoused neighbors, a rejection of the way our mayor has turned his back on labor, Fattah said. Yes, we secured the DFL endorsement, but we know the status quo are going to do anything and everything to maintain power. And let me tell you, while I was running for mayor, I heard the word status quo so many times that I wanted to ban it from being used for the rest of eternity. Because at a certain point, if you keep saying status quo, it becomes the status quo. And then you go, oh no, am I in an alternate universe? They'll have all the money in the world. They'll have all the influence in the world, but they don't have you. Frey campaign manager Sam Schulenberg said in a statement, this election should be decided by the entire city rather than the small group of people who became delegates, particularly in light of the extremely flawed and irregular conduct of this convention. Voters will now have a clear choice between the records and the leadership of Senator Fattah and Mayor Fattah. Okay. Fattah and Mayor Frey. That's kind of fun because it's like kind of rhymey. We look forward to taking our vision to the voters in November. And Jacob Frey, like, this is not like an old guy. Like, it is a white guy, but Jacob Frey is not an old guy. All right, let's see. Jacob Frey, current mayor of Minneapolis. So he's 43 years old. So he has been mayor since he was 35. Very interesting. So again, like, still, a very young mayor, because if he's been 2 terms, I'm guessing, about 35, he would have been mayor since. All right, interesting. Also, I've already been married twice. No shade, but I do keep an eye on that. Again, after 2, I go, all right, maybe it's you. Let's see. Convention confusion and distrust over electronic balloting snarled much of the Minneapolis Democratic Farmer Labor Party's mayoral endorsement process, with voting slowly taking place over several hours. By 7:45 p.m., only the first round of voting had been leaving just Fattah and Frey left in the race for an endorsement. Fattah was in the lead with 43.85% of delegate votes. Frey followed up with 31.54%. Frey campaign spokesperson Darwin Forsyth made a motion to void the results of the first ballot, saying he wanted it redone with paper ballots, but that proposal failed. Subsequent ballots for the mayoral endorsement were to be paper ballots. Party officials announced at one point it took nearly 2 hours to get results from the first ballot using the electronic process. According to party officials, this was partially because the technical consultant in charge of tallying experienced a medical emergency and had to leave the convention. Whoa, drama, as always in municipal politics. Frey supporters made proposals to suspend the rules and adjourn the convention without a mayoral endorsement, but were voted down. Around 9 p.m., with just 1 hour left before the convention had to end, according to its contract with the Target Center, Minneapolis City Council Vice President Aisha Chugte made a successful motion for delegates to vote on the mayoral endorsement by raising their badges. Chugte is a Fateh supporter. Steve Brandt and Bob Fine were endorsed for the Board of Estimate and Taxation, and Charles Rucker, currently an at-large commissioner on the Park and Recreation Board, was endorsed in his campaign to win the board's District 2 seat. The endorsement process for Park Board continued into the night. Results will be posted on the Minneapolis DFL website. So let's see. Search for consensus. Hundreds of Minneapolis DFL activists has descended on the Target Center in search of a consensus on who would best represent the party in the fall election, Frey or Fateh, the leading candidates in the field of five. Frey, a two-term incumbent who saw the city through the COVID-19 pandemic, is a relative moderate compared with Fateh, a Democratic socialist who was elected to the Senate in 2020 amid a wave of progressive candidates. And also, a lot of times you'll see just structurally when things are really in disarray and people feel like their needs aren't being met, a lot of times communities will and cities will turn to socialists or socialism in general. You know, there's certainly larger conversations about how that can be a distraction and almost a tool that can be weaponized by the right. But if we see these people actually winning elections now, well, that will be a different tune. But I have some articles about socialist policy actually going into play in other cities in America and how it's working, specifically an article about Kansas City. Other candidates for the mayoral endorsement were Jazz Hampton, a lawyer who created the Turn Signal app, which provides real-time legal advice to drivers at traffic stops, the Reverend Dwayne Davis, lead pastor at Plymouth Congregational Church. And it's interesting because, when we talk so much about separation of church and state, a lot of times you will see pastors and reverends and, religious folks enter into politics because it is one of the professions where you will already be a really good public speaker. We already saw that in the mayoral race here in 2025 with now I've forgotten everybody's name. I've completely blocked it from my mind. Who's the guy, AJ, that was who am I thinking of? The black man who I did many forums with, who's like in his 40s. Let me see. God, this is driving me crazy. Sorry, my brain is not fully working. This is why I don't love doing this show on a Sunday, but you got to do what you got to do. It's really sad that I've it's so crazy. I completely had to go back to my creative brain. So I had to completely shut off all this stuff that I jammed into my brain for this election. And it's almost like an impossibility for them both to coexist. All right. Here's what I'm talking about. Michael Blake. Jesus, it took so long. I was like, I've said this guy's name 8,000 times, so why can't I remember it? So it was interesting, like what we saw with Michael Blake. Like, I really liked Michael Blake as a candidate. I thought he was, he is an excellent public speaker because he comes from, speaking at churches, and he knows obviously how to get the attention of large groups of people, just like me from being a stand-up comedian. But, there is like this thought process that goes through my mind that it's like, if you are someone who is a leader in a religious community, like, should you also even be allowed to be a political leader? And I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I think it is an interesting and important discussion to be had. And I was talking to my friend Brian Silva over the weekend about Americans United, and I think we're going to get someone on the show from that. So that will be a conversation that I could have with a representative from there. So anyway, the Reverend Dwayne Davis, lead pastor at Plymouth Congregational Church, and Brenda Short, a small business owner. All three candidates were dropped following the first ballot after failing to win at least 20% of delegate votes. All three said they would continue to run regardless, which is honestly pretty ridiculous. Like if you're dropped from the ballot and you're not even getting 20, at a certain point, you just got to throw your hat in and get behind somebody else who's running, who you think will be the best option for the place that you want to represent. Fateh, whose substantial lead in the delegates was well known before the convention, was the only mayoral candidate who promised to end his campaign if another candidate won the DFL endorsement. The DFL endorsement bestows the party's symbolic vote of confidence as well as volunteer power and voter files. Party members are discouraged from publicly supporting anyone other than endorsed candidates. I don't love that, but I understand what they're talking about here, because that's a way for the establishment to maintain control while giving the illusion that it is voters who have control. But the DFL hasn't agreed on a mayoral endorsement since 2009, when R.T. Ryback broke through the 60% vote threshold for its backing. Former Minneapolis DFL chair Breonna Rose Lee said it would be amazing if party members were able to unify Saturday around someone for the city's top office. I'm not holding out hope, she said. I know getting to 60% in Minneapolis is tough because it is a heavily opinionated city. I mean, every city is opinion. Like, what are we talking about? But it would be great if we could. With no viable Republican Party in the city, political divisions have formed into the DFL between traditional Democrats and the party's ascendant left wing that includes Democratic Socialists. Several city council members and contenders are Democratic Socialists, including two who have already been endorsed by the DFL. Ward 9 incumbent Jason Chavez and Ward 8 hopeful Soren Stevenson. At the last DFL city convention in 2021, no mayoral candidate won enough votes to land the endorsement. Democratic Socialist Sheila Nezad came in first with 53%, followed by Frey. In the weeks leading up to Saturday's convention, divisions deepened when DFL activists formed a group called Protect Our Platform in an effort to block Minneapolis candidates from being endorsed by both the party and the Democratic Socialists of America. Under a rule change proposed by the group, candidates winning both endorsements would have to accept the backing of only one. The DSA is not a political party, but it operates exactly like one. And a quick read of the platform of both will reveal some drastic differences, said 5th Congressional District DFL Chair Scott Graham, a member of Protect Our Platform, in his non-official capacity. And I have to read up more on who Scott Graham is, but to say the DSA is not a political party, but it operates exactly like one, I couldn't agree more. And that's basically the sentiment that I've been sharing with you throughout the mayoral election here in New York City. Everyone says, oh, how great, how new, something new. It's like, well, we'll see if they operate like something new, because right now they're acting exactly like a political party, and not in the great sense of the best sense of the word. Even if you like their policy, their behavior to me is still like our way or the highway, which to me is not democracy. The Democratic Socialists of America want to defund the police, Graham said. They want to disarm all law enforcement officers. They want to free all incarcerated people, legalize the sex trade, the drug trade, homelessness, and squatting. I could go on. It sounds bad when he lays it all out like that, and he's certainly using inflammatory language. That being said, he's not exactly incorrect. Those are some really good high points that we found to be in strident contrast to the DFL's values. But he said Protect Our Platform eventually withdrew the proposed rule change because it has become incredibly divisive, counter to the group's intent to strengthen party unity. The convention opened Saturday morning with a speech by Minnesota DFL Chair Richard Carl Bloom, who framed the gathering in terms of national goals, putting a Democrat in the White House by repairing the party's brand, currently popular with just 38% of Americans. and reminding voters that Democrats are the party of working families, Social Security, Medicare, and universal school meals. Well, right, but we have to start acting like it. We are a coalition by definition. The Democratic Farmer Labor Party, Carl Bloom said, our party is made up of farmers and laborers. Our party is made up of progressives, environmentalists, feminists, democratic socialists. Applause broke out at this. Gays, lesbians, bisexual, transgender. Again, it's like identity, identity, identity. And how about we go back to the part where you said, these are the policies that we want to stand behind and really make good on that. We come from different places. We come from different spaces. We represent what is best about America. Our differences are our strength. Well, prove it. If you want to be an authoritarian party, go be a Republican. And that's very interesting because I love that use of authoritarian because that is a lot of my beef with the DSA is it does feel authoritarian. And authoritarianism is still authoritarianism even if you happen to agree with the sentiments of the authoritarian figure. So as a response to people like Donald Trump and MAGA, it just makes me laugh that so many people are going towards the DSA because to me, it really is the same energy as MAGA. Obviously, wildly different viewpoints, but you must look at the energy and you must look at how a group reacts when you question anything about them or protest them. And that, I guess, is the most succinct way to talk about my negative feelings towards the Democratic Socialists of America. And again, I think when Mamdani wins, we'll see. Is he just going to be someone who is doing the bidding of the DSA, or is he truly a complex figure who is going to use his knowledge and his life experiences to make the best choices for America, or is he just going off a DSA playbook to use the strength of the DSA to continue to rise in political fame? And I don't know the answer to that, but I think that's something we really need to keep an eye on. And again, my problems with the DSA, as again we saw with AOC. Lee, who opposed to the attempt to divide DFL and DSA endorsed candidates, said the party could not afford to alienate its left wing. My problem is not with a Democrat that I agree with 98% of the time, and I think it's sad that there are Democrats in this coalition and in our big tent who feel differently and that would rather spend their time attacking members of their own party. She said, and I ultimately do agree with that, which again is why I certainly will be supporting Mamdani over Adams or Cuomo or Sliwa. I would rather us come united today, pick a candidate, then we can all unify under them so we can maybe send our volunteer power to the suburbs. Last minute resolutions. With minutes to go before the end of the convention, the remaining delegates approved 2 resolutions to oppose any city or park board contracts with entities complicit in the occupation and genocide of Gaza, and to oppose the use of laser light projections by any city agencies or concert venues along the river in order to protect migrating birds. Very interesting of the 2 topics. Very interesting 2 topics, and how they work with one another. All right, moving on. Speaking of Gaza, actually, we do have an update of today. Of course, it's sad and it's horrific, and you go, what the fuck is going on? This is from NPR. Nearly 100 people killed seeking aid in Gaza on Sunday, Palestinian officials say. We have moved into the girl section of our show because, girl, what the fuck are we doing? At least 94 Palestinians were killed by Israeli military fire across Gaza on Sunday as they tried to get food aid, according to local health authorities and hospital morgue officials, in one of the deadliest days in recent months for those seeking assistance. The deadliest incident occurred in northern Gaza, near the Israeli border area of Zakim, where at least 81 Palestinians were killed as they tried to grab sacks of flour for bread from UN World Food Program trucks entering from Israel. The Palestinian Red Crescent said Israeli military forces had targeted civilians waiting for humanitarian aid north of Beit Lahia. The organization said a Gaza City field hospital it operates had received 95 people with injuries, some of whom were in critical condition. In a statement, the Israel Defense Forces said its troops encountered thousands of Palestinians gathered in northern Gaza and fired warning shots in order to remove an immediate threat posed to them. The Israeli military said it was examining the incident, but that an initial review suggests that the number of casualties reported does not align with the information held by the IDF. Oh, what a surprise. I don't think there was absolutely one time that we read an article where any of the reports from the different sides match. Since May, the WFP has been delivering food aid to Gaza in a separate program from the U.S. and Israeli-backed food distribution system. Many of the WFP aid trucks have been looted by armed gangs and hungry crowds as they enter Gaza. In a statement, the WFP said its 25-truck convoy had been released from checkpoints to enter Gaza Sunday morning when it encountered massive crowds of hungry civilians and then came under fire. WFP reiterates that any violence involving civilians seeking humanitarian aid is completely unacceptable, the group said. And I mean, at this point, saying shit like this is like saying thoughts and prayers. Like, you can continue to say that it's unacceptable, but it keeps happening. Like, the rest of the world just needs to step in and be like, yo, stop this. We continue to call for the protection of all civilians and aids workers delivering life-saving assistance. Sunday was one of the deadliest days Gaza health officials have recorded in recent months for Palestinians seeking aid amid severe food shortages and widespread hunger. Among them was Hassan Abu Marasa, who was wounded in his head and leg from Israeli tank fire in northern Gaza and was being treated at Shifa Hospital in Gaza City. "Hunger makes you desperate," he cried. "I have no food at home. I went out to feed my kids, and this is what happened to me." Also on Sunday, Israel announced new evacuations in a part of central Gaza where it said its military had not operated before. People in the west part of Deir al-Bala, a city about 10 miles southwest of Gaza City, were urged to leave for their safety, according to a post on X by Avishai Adre, the Israel Defense Forces spokesperson for Arab media. Adre told anyone nearby, including those inside the tents located in the area, to evacuate south toward al-Mawasai, in the post translated from Arabic. In a subsequent post on X, Adre urged people not to return to a number of areas in northern Gaza, including Beit Lahia, Jabalia, sorry, this is going to be really butchered, Beit Hunan, Shuja, this is Daraj, Old City, Tufa, Zaytun, and their neighborhoods. He said the areas were dangerous combat zones and said the IDF was operating there with extreme intensity. Pope Leo, speaking on Sunday, mourned the deaths of 3 people sheltering in the Holy Family Church in Gaza City and called for an immediate halt to the barbarity in Gaza. And I mean, again, like, world leaders, speak out, but at a certain point, this needs to be something where I just think, like, it needs to be a decision of, like, all the countries in the world have to come together and be like, this is a genocide. Like, we have to stop killing people. Halt immediately. We cannot do this anymore. Israel, we are stopping you. It is way too big for, the words of individual people, unfortunately, to stop it. This is why we have international, court, basically. I mean, like, what? So in the International Court of Justice, how do you, it's almost like, how do you, I'm just reading up on, the International Court of Justice and, what are you doing? How are you working with international law? What are international? You can look at, you can read things about, human rights, on Human Rights Watch and stuff, about how it applies to Gaza. I mean, we've read article after article, and obviously nothing seems to be working. it says the fundamental rule of international humanitarian law in conflicts is that all parties must distinguish at all times between combatants and civilians. Civilians and civilian objects must never be the target of attacks. Parties may only target combatants and military objectives. It is not simply enough to claim that civilians are not the target of attack. International humanitarian law requires that the parties to the conflict must take all feasible precautions to minimize harm to civilians and civilian objects. If an attack fails to discriminate between combatants and civilians or would be expected to cause disproportionate harm to the civilian population compared to the military gain, it is also prohibited. So, I mean, that right there, that little bit of knowledge about international humanitarian law, I mean, I think gives us all the answers. It is quite clear that there are, too many people who have nothing to do with the military who have now been, killed, tens of thousands of people, in fact. And, you have to prove that the loss is much more drastic than the military gain. And while I do believe that Hamas hides weapons and themselves among their own people to kind of pressure the IDF into dropping bombs in civilian areas, that still does. And while that is a terrible method, and I do think Hamas is complicit in the genocide against its own people, 100%. That does not, in my opinion, when you look at this really simple to understand, I feel like this is broken down pretty simply, humanitarian law, like there is still no way to justify the amount of loss that Gaza has experienced. I just don't think there's any way to justify it. There is no military gain big enough, because when it comes down to it, Gaza just does not have the weapons to fight in the way the IDF does. So, like, the IDF can protect Israel, but like the amount of loss that has happened, international court, step in fully, stop it.
How do you feel about them warning that they're going to attack certain cities?
Well, I mean, that's a traditional thing that happened. But I mean, it's also like what I started thinking about was like, they don't even have food. I don't think they're on fucking X. Like, how are these warnings being passed along, to the people? What is the timeline on it? What is the method? And also, ultimately, where do they don't have anywhere to go. Where are they supposed to go?
Yeah, no, I was just curious, because it seems like the narrative is sort of that Israel is just indiscriminately killing, civilians, left and right, and they don't care. And there are a lot of like things where something goes down and then they're like, oops, it was a mistake, which is not acceptable. You can't just say mistakes.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that, like, it does seem that there's some sort of an attempt to not kill all the civilians, and they're trying to warn people, and they're like, we're going to blow this place up. Get out. Again, where do they go?
I think there is, but it's not enough. And again, I mean, I think a big part of the problem is that Hamas is definitely hiding weapons and, and military personnel and stuff amongst the people on purpose. I do believe they had, they understand that the world now sees Israel, or most of the world sees Israel, as the bad guy, and that they are loving that, and it's great for their strategy. And I think that they are more concerned with taking down Israel than protecting the welfare of their own people. So I think that's definitely true. And I think many people maybe don't agree with that, who are pro-Palestine. They don't agree that Hamas is part of the problem. I think it's like pretty hard to argue that they aren't part of the problem. But no matter what, no matter whose fault or problem or who's complicit, it kind of at this point doesn't matter because of the immense loss that the Palestinian people have experienced. So to me, it's just like, other countries have to step in. This has been going on for decades. These two groups of people can't get along. So other people have to step in to mediate, to stop the death and destruction. It is the only way. Because, I mean, otherwise, again, it really is, when people talk about like, oh, it's the Holocaust happening again. Like, yeah, it fucking is, because everyone's just watching, and then everyone's going to steps in way, 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 way too late. And like, America was already guilty of this last time. Like, let's not be guilty of this again. Not that I want to get us involved in any shit. I mean, we're already involved because we're buds with Israel, but, and certainly I don't see that going away under Trump's reign, part of the reason he won, in fact. All right, moving on to what I think in some ways was the top story of this week so far, which is the Colbert show and, just the Late Show in general getting canceled. So there's a couple, takes from this. Obviously, the left went wild with their headlines. They're like, this is Trump. Trump is now controlling the media. He's allowing what we can and cannot see. I'm going to read a couple headlines just because I don't want to read every article, but I think the headlines were very telling. So we have MSNBC's headline says, the cancellation of Stephen Colbert's Late Show is a warning for comedy's future. AXIOS says Sanders, Warren accuse CBS of canceling Colbert's show in appeal to Trump. Mother Jones says Colbert's cancellation is a dark warning. The article I'm actually going to read for part of this, because I'm going to read a couple articles, is from Vox. So let's start with that. This is by Constance Grady. It says there's a bigger story behind Colbert's cancellation. On Thursday, CBS announced that it was going to cancel The Late Show with Stephen Colbert after Colbert's contract ends in May 2026. The news comes at a politically fraught moment for CBS and its parent company, Paramount Global. It's also the capper on the long arc of late-night political comedy, a genre Colbert was instrumental in building and which now finally appears to be on its last legs. In a statement, CBS said its decision to end The Late Show, which began with David Letterman as host in 1993, was purely financial. We are proud that Stephen called CBS home, the CBS statement said. This is a purely financial decision against a challenging backdrop in late night. It is not related in any way to the show's performance, content, or other matters happening at Paramount. And I mean, Entertainment Business 101, never trust the official statement. That last line, that The Late Show's cancellation has nothing to do with other matters happening at Paramount, seems directly aimed at tamping down speculation about CBS and Paramount Global's political motivations for canceling a decades-long fixture of network television. I mean, it's a big deal for a network like CBS to just not have a late-night show. Paramount Global is currently attempting to merge with Skydance Media, and company leadership has been acting as though they are concerned that President Donald Trump might try to block the merger. Earlier this month, CBS and 60 Minutes announced a $16 million settlement in its lawsuit with Trump over the editing of a segment about former Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris, an extraordinary concession for a media company in a case that experts agree CBS would have likely won in court. The longtime executive producer of 60 Minutes also resigned earlier this year, citing threats to his journalistic independence. Days before the cancellation, Colbert said on his show, "I am offended by the settlement. I don't know if anything will repair my trust in this company. But just taking a stab at it, I'd say $16 million would help," he quipped. The payout, he added, was a big, fat bribe. 2 days later, reports say, CBS told Colbert they were canceling his show. The network's stated reason for canceling the show has the sheen of believability. It's true that the late-night ecosystem is struggling. Still, Colbert's show has consistently led the ratings for its time slot. CBS and Paramount Global, The Atlantic contended on Thursday, no longer deserve the benefit of the doubt. On Truth Social, Trump, a frequent target of Colbert's jokes, is celebrating. Quote, "I absolutely love that Colbert got fired," Trump said, posted Friday morning. His talent was even less than his ratings. I mean, takes one to know one, dude. I mean, when we're talking about talent, like, there's literally no reason to be a villain unless you don't have talent. I mean, I guess it's fun. Colbert's ousting feels symbolic, not just of CBS's apparent decision to bow down to Trump, but of the end of late-night political comedy as a genre. Sure, John Oliver's Last Week Tonight continues gamely on HBO, but the kind of late-night show that felt urgent and necessary 20 years ago, the stalwart, outraged host cracking wise about the foibles of the corrupt federal government, and the credulous media ecosystem that enabled it has been fading for a long time. Now its moment is coming to a close. And also, when we talk about John Oliver's Last Week Tonight, I mean, first of all, the fact that it's on, a channel that you have to pay for, like HBO, already is making it something elite. It's making it for the haves and not the have-nots. And it, my problem with, shows like Last Week Tonight and The Daily Show are like, I think they're doing great stuff. I think they're doing great reporting, far more in depth than the CBS, NBC type of late night shows. They are smarter, they're more well researched, they're punchier, they're edgier, all these things. But again, like, all right, they're just shows that people who already agree with that stuff are watching. And that's kind of always been my problem with political comedy. Like, how can we, I don't know, like just present maybe the not obvious facts, or not like do a show that is aligning with all the things that we already read in the news earlier today. And like, I love the deal. And that's why I really enjoyed working with Jordan Klepper, because it's like, okay, well, at least we're going out and talking to the other, I hate calling it the other half because I don't want it to be seen like that. But really, at least we're talking to these people who we disagree with, instead of just, making inside jokes. Because otherwise, like, if it's people who already agree with this political perspective, writing a show to be hosted by people who already agree with that political perspective, to then be aired to and watched by people who already agree with that political perspective, well, really, what was the point of that? Just to say, all sit at the lunch table and talk about how great and smart and right we are? Like, I guess, like, I don't, if we're using comedy as a weapon or a tool, I don't really see its power if it is not helping to change the opinions of people who might disagree with the perspective that we are so sure is right. You see what I'm saying? Like, even when I applied to be a writer years ago on Sam B, I was excited to submit my packet, but I mean, I knew when I submitted it, I wasn't getting chosen because, like, well, first of all, there was like a list of rules, and I'll find it for you someday. But like, it was a list of rules basically telling me, as a writer and as an artist, the point of view I had to have going into it. So me, as a comic, You've already ignited the want to rebel in me. You've already pissed me off with these rules for this packet. Besides like structure, or like how, or what format I need to submit in my opinion, you can tell me what you're looking for, but to have rules about my thought process and what I can say, that should not, like, that's not, you're not asking me for a creative submission then. And like, fuck you for calling it a creative submission. Because once you put rules around the creativity, it is no longer, in my opinion, creativity. It is actually propaganda. And even though it is propaganda that is aligned with what I mostly think, that is not okay. I am not okay with propaganda, period, hard stop, end of story, even if it aligns with my thing. And that's a problem I've had so many times in comedy. Like, I want to be able to present pieces sometimes that like are making fun of the left, and maybe like we can then like, I think the left, these leftist shows should be doing a lot more introspection, rather than just let's, digest 30 minutes of why we're the best and they're the worst and we're smart and they're stupid every single night. Like, where has it gotten us? It's gotten us fucking nowhere. It's gotten us to Donald Trump term 2 is where it's gotten us. Jon Stewart and the Rise of Political Comedy. The late-night political comedy show, as we know it, was developed and perfected by The Daily Show under Jon Stewart over the course of the 2000 presidential election. As the question of whether Al Gore or George W. Bush had won the Electoral College wended its way through the Supreme Court, The Daily Show took on a central role. Stewart and his colleagues, including Colbert, were the TV personalities best equipped to talk about how fundamentally weird and confusing the whole thing was. After Bush emerged victorious, the Daily Show became even more crucial. Their skill set was uniquely suited to the Bush years. While the administration took on a pious pose of compassionate conservatism, it was lying to the American people and embroiling the country in an endless foreign war. Stewart and his cohorts knew how to call Bush out on their hypocrisy and to be funny about it too. And I think at that time, like I was I was still a little bit young to be like this involved in politics at that time in my life, or in for my opinion, you can be however young you want to when you get into politics, but just like that wasn't how my life was at that time. But it's interesting because I do feel like in the beginning, what the Daily Show and stuff was serving was new and perhaps had a grander impact than maybe it has now. And like I'm itching to get on the Daily Show. Don't think I'm not. I would love to be on the Daily Show, but I would certainly be pushing things that to push the envelope a little bit more. Like, isn't that what comedy is about? When it stops being about that, like, what the fuck? I think Ronnie Chang actually does a really good idea. Like he like plays with kind of both sides really well. I really like the way he presents pieces and just his stand-up comedy in general. They were young and edgy, making one of the most exciting shows on television. It felt as if they were telling the truth in a time when no one else was, which is exactly. And now everyone is claiming that, including this show, that this is where you get the truth and you don't get the truth anywhere else. And so that claim has, kind of doesn't mean what it used to. Stewart always insisted that he wasn't a real journalist and the Daily Show wasn't a real news show. Nonetheless, a 2007 poll from the Pew Research Center found Stewart tied for 4th place in a list of America's most trusted journalists. Again, because that was the start of when we were seeing people having a real distrust with traditional news sources and having other options, comedy, and then we would see podcasts and Instagram accounts, along with Brian Williams, Tom Brokaw, Dan Rather, and Anderson Cooper. For lots of liberals, especially young ones, Stewart absolutely was a journalist, and so were the comedians he elevated. And it also speaks to this need that we have to be constantly entertained. And so people aren't going to take in the news in a way that is not funny or entertaining or salacious. And so the Daily Show provided that. So if you were just kind of getting your news, certainly better to get your news there than not get your news at all, for sure. In 2005, Colbert developed his own Daily Show spinoff, The Colbert Report. Even more biting than The Daily Show, The Colbert Report saw the host playing a parodic version of Bill O'Reilly, then the biggest star on Fox News. Like O'Reilly, Colbert's character was pompous and swaggering, lapping up his audience's applause and pontificating on truthiness and the American dream. In 2006, he headlined the White House Correspondents' Dinner in character and ripped into Bush directly to his face, in a moment that Vanity Fair would say turned Colbert into a folk hero for the left. With the Colbert Report, an accepted institution, Colbert and Stewart developed a double act. They held a 2010 rally to restore fear and/or sanity, with Stewart pleading for sanity and Colbert for fear. In retrospect, those years would represent the zenith of their popularity. Colbert was the first Stewart acolyte to get a Daily Show spinoff, but he wouldn't be the last. John Oliver got his own show in 2014. Samantha Bee got hers in 2015. Hassan Minhaj got his in 2018. The 2010s saw the Daily Show model of news-focused political comedy spread across the landscape of television, no longer a scrappy upstart, but an institution, what we understood as what late-night television was supposed to look like. And it's interesting because, again, once we go from scrappy upstart to institution, the institution starts getting involved. And then, in my opinion, things start getting watered down. There were 2 big problems with all that success. The first was that the Bush years were over. In 2008, Barack Obama became president. And while his administration had plenty of foibles for liberal comics to skewer, the central joke of the hypocrisy of neoconservatism conservatism was no longer available to them. The urgency of their comedy, the sense that they were meeting a moment as no one else could, began to fade away. And again, I think this was just like, a lack of creativity here, right? Because like, yes, you can certainly make fun of the president, even if he is the president from the side that you wanted him to be from. And also, like, this would have been a great opportunity to get into municipal politics. And even if it's not something that's directly affecting all Americans, I think, as we've shown on this show, the stories are certainly fascinating. And ultimately, what happens in individual states does end up affecting the country as a whole. The second problem was the success meant that the Daily Show brand of comedy was no longer punching exclusively up. They couldn't critique hidebound media institutions for failing to do their jobs anymore because now they were media institutions. What else could it mean when in 2015 Colbert took over the Late Show and became the face of CBS's late night lineup? I was so upset when that happened, honestly, because I was like, you're going to be boring now. You're not going to be like fun like you were on the Colbert Report. And like, although I still like Stephen Colbert, like that's exactly what happened. And again, I'm not saying he's like a bad guy or whatever, but I mean, like, he just, he like lives in this like really rich New Jersey town, and just like, it's just like, we just have a bunch of rich people fucking talking to us. And like, I don't know if he was rich before, but again, like, if your only money is from like the thing that you did, okay, but then you have to also do a really good job of, once you have money, making sure that that money doesn't disconnect you or change your values. And I think we see a lot of celebrities struggle with that.
Do you think this is a political move, or is it a financial decision, like they're kind of trying to say right now, that they're saying that was losing?
Oh, I'm not
40
sure.
million?
I'm not sure yet. That's what we're talking about right now. I'm still deciding. I mean, I think it's interesting because I think my point kind of being like the left all immediately went to like hysteria. Like, this is definitely us, them trying to silence us. But like, are they just following Stephen Colbert's lead? Like, I don't actually know, because I also wouldn't trust Stephen Colbert, because like, it behooves Stephen Colbert for us to think this is some kind of, suffocation of viewpoint, because if it's actually just because the show's not making money, that devalues him as an entertainer and could ruin his career. But if he plays it that he is this victim of political silencing, well, that makes him even more valuable as an entertainment entity. So like, it's something that I just need to explore further through these articles, because you certainly, it's hard because everyone, on the left trusts Stephen Colbert, but ultimately Stephen Colbert is an entertainer and he needs to look out for Stephen Colbert. So I am certainly not going to trust what he says about the situation of his own career.
Like, yeah, what if like he just didn't want to take a pay cut? He's like, 15 million isn't enough. I can't go down to 5 million.
Absolutely.
And he's like, 5 million because they said that it costs $100 million a year to put on the show.
Yeah.
And they lost 40 million.
Yeah, and I mean, like, that's what the other article that I chose will go into, how streaming is just absolutely annihilating regular broadcast television, and the timing is certainly sus, but maybe it's just something the network didn't think about, and Stephen Colbert, is like, whoa, I can angle this perfectly to make me not look like a fucking chump who just got fired,
Or maybe they're just worried about Trump is coming after people now with the lawsuits. He just came after the Wall Street Journal, I think $100 billion for the Epstein letter. So that just went out today. So they're probably like, well,
it did. I was like, I knew he wasn't going to let that sit, because that was damning.
Yeah. So it's like, these companies are like, okay, the president's team is coming after us with lawsuits. This is not good. Maybe we should do something to,
well, and certainly after that 16.
Colbert.
Well, it's not, but it's they're sacrificing the late night entity as a whole. If they just fired Colbert, that would be like obvious. But the fact that they're getting rid of late night, they're claiming as a whole. That being said, I'm like, are they just going to replace it with they're going to replace it with something in that time slot. So we'll see. Wait, I want to pull up that Wall Street Journal lawsuit. too. Okay, we'll get into that too. How late night television lost its bite. When Trump won the presidential election in 2016, part of the received wisdom was that this would be great for comedy. Trump, after all, was a joke. He would offer all those Daily Show graduates plenty of fodder for their routines. Instead, liberal comedy faltered. We knew it was going to happen. We fucking knew it was going to happen. The skill set they had developed for the Bush years, the ripping away of pious lies to reveal the violent truth below, had no particular effect on a figure as shameless and straightforward as Trump. One by one, the shows of the Daily Show alums began to topple. Patriot Act with Hassan Minhaj went in 2020. Full Frontal with Samantha Bee left in 2022. On The Daily Show itself, hosted from 2015 to 2022 by Trevor Noah, ratings toppled. Colbert dropped his character to host The Late Show, but he criticized Trump often and vociferously as himself. All the same, his work didn't feel particularly biting or urgent anymore. Young people, particularly young men, were more likely to find right-wing comedy to be edgy and transgressive. And so not only was it not helping us to, maintain our own party members, it was turning off party members and not accumulating new young people. And it's where are you going to get new progressives? Usually from a crop of new young people who are just, getting the right to vote. And that stopped happening, especially amongst young men. Women, I think the stats remain pretty much the same, but we were losing men. If something was the height of fashion 20 years ago, that almost inversely makes it less likely to seem hip and cool at the moment, the media critic Matt Sienkiewicz told me in 2022. There's a rebelliousness in the way people think of this right-wing comedy, right? Even if it really is regressive and pointing back to old dominant ideas. But it can be branded as being the opposite of Stephen Colbert crying about January 6th during his monologue, which is very much not cool to the teens. Also, to cry about January 6th is actually ridiculous. Get fully get your shit together. Stop. Out of all the things that have happened, if you're crying over Gaza, I understand that, but you're crying over January 6th, stop. That's part of what's so striking about Paramount. You can be like, I am concerned. I certainly was sitting at my TV, watching my TV going, what the fuck is happening to us as a country? But I wasn't crying on late. I mean, also it's not like he just got the news on air. To cry about it on air, it feels a little performative. That's part of what's so striking about Paramount's decision to cancel Colbert's show in an apparent attempt to curry favor with Trump. Colbert's work hasn't felt dangerous in a long time. We're a long way from that 2006 White House correspondent dinner when Colbert delivered his jokes to a tense and scandalized crowd and Bush walked away furious. Colbert is the definition of a mainstream comedian now, and it doesn't seem as though anyone has any illusions that the jokes he cracks in between celebrity glad-handing and crowd work are culturally fundamental. Yet somehow, with a president this thin-skinned and a corporate leadership this obsequious, Stephen Colbert has been rendered threatening once again. The man who's too uncool for teenagers is, under this administration, just dangerous enough to fire. So that is Vox's perspective on it. And then you have, meanwhile at New York Times, which, again, just every week I'm kind of like, I don't know. I don't know what the hell is going on at the New York Times anymore. Just I feel like every year that we've done this show, I trust the New York Times less and less as a news source. I'm not saying that you should too, but I don't know. And it's not even based on this article. Just in general, their perspective have been getting odder and odder. Their handling of the New York City, Democratic primaries were very weird. Just, to me, New York Times right now, read with caution. But this is by John Coblin. At the New York Times, not even The Late Show could defy gravity. CBS could not figure out a path to profitability in an entertainment world increasingly dominated by streaming. Stephen Colbert's announcement on Thursday night that The Late Show was being canceled by CBS stunned the entertainment industry, the public, and even his staff. But the writing has been on the wall for some time. The Late Show, a fixture of the network for over 3 decades, was racking up losses of tens of millions of dollars a year, and this was reported elsewhere. I did check, and the gap was growing fast, according to 2 people familiar with the show's finances. Like other late night shows before it, The Late Show was canceled when the network could not figure out how to make the finances work in an entertainment world increasingly dominated by streaming. So as CBS executives mapped out the schedule and budget for next year, George Cheeks, CBS's president, decided in recent weeks that the network couldn't take those losses anymore, the two people said. Mr. Colbert learned of the decision on Wednesday night. Shari Redstone, the controlling shareholder of Paramount, CBS's parent company, learned about it on Thursday, according to two other people. The cancellation underscores just how rapidly the late night genre has fallen. Not even The Late Show, the highest rated of those network talk shows, was safe, as many in the entertainment industry assumed it was. Nevertheless, questions lingered on Friday about whether political calculations, not strictly financial ones, had played a role in the decision as well. Paramount is closing a multi-billion-dollar merger with the movie studio Skydance, a deal that still requires approval from the Trump administration. Again, this is the same stuff, but to reiterate, earlier this month, Paramount agreed to pay President Trump $16 million to settle a lawsuit over an interview on CBS's 60 Minutes. Mr. Colbert, a longtime critic of Mr. Trump, as we said, called it a big fat bribe. Trump celebrated it. And then going into Senator Bernie Sanders, independent of Vermont, said on social media on Friday, Stephen Colbert, an extraordinary talent and the most popular late night host, slams the deal. Days later, he's fired. Do I think this is a coincidence? No. The Writers Guild of America, the union that represents thousands of TV and movie writers, said on Friday that it had significant concerns that the Late Show's cancellation is a bribe, sacrificing free speech to curry favor with the Trump administration as the company looks for merger approval. CBS executives said in a statement on Thursday that the cancellation was not related in any way to the show's performance, content, or other matters happening at Paramount. Even 5 or 6 years ago, many network and late night shows remained comfortably profitable. That began to change around the COVID-19 pandemic and has accelerated since. Last year, the network late shows drew an estimated $220 million in advertising revenue, 50% less than 7 years earlier, according to Guideline, an advertising data firm. The Late Show alone lost $50 million in ad revenue over that period, Guideline said. And I also think this is like just the same way as a lot of companies and corporations stopped investing in pride with this rightward movement of the country. I'm sure the same thing happened with The Late Show. They're like, well, we're only going to be able to advertise to liberals, basically, with whatever it is we're advertising. So maybe this isn't the smartest place to buy ad space. And I think the same thing, happened with Pride. People are being like, well, we've showed it in the past, and at this point, we might be alienating more people who would buy our product than we are making them feel welcome or included. And especially because in many ways, the left's Target boycott was super successful, but I think also many times it is perhaps the right that bands together better. So they were willing to risk that, people who might be offended that they were no longer participating in Pride would still shop or buy their product or whatever it is they were advertising, whereas they knew that if they continued to advertise or have a Pride float or, have a LGBTQ section, that they would lose more customers that way. It's just like, what is going to yield the better financial results is really all you're thinking about when you're a company. I mean, that's not how I would run a company, but I would have other elements that I was thinking of, like integrity, but that's not how most companies are run. In part, that's because during their heyday, late night shows were propelled to profitable heights by their popularity with younger audiences. Again, a lot of talk about youth, the most appealing demographic for advertisers. And again, like young people watching like TV on a regular network, like that's just not happening. Even I don't watch network television unless it's like SNL. And I really don't. I used to, like when I was in high school, I watched SNL religiously. Now, I mean, part of it is because I became a stand-up, so I'm like never home on Saturday nights anymore. But I just don't, I don't even watch it Sunday morning a lot of times anymore. Like if I'm home as a special treat at that time, because I'm home so infrequently at Saturday on 11:30, I'll be like, oh, cool, I'm home and I can watch SNL live. But I don't really make an effort to watch it other than that.
Aren't there a way? Do you think there's a way that they could make it for less money? Like, does it have to be $100 million? Like, couldn't they do it for whatever they're.
I'm guessing most of that is people's pay, and because of union rules and stuff, a lot of times you can't fire. Like a lot of times you're forced to use more labor than you actually need, in my opinion. Like you can't all of a sudden downsize it to like that it's like a French film and you only need six people
$100 million
because of union rules.
I feel like you could do something. It's not $100 million.
Well, I mean, look up how much was Colbert getting paid. Look it up.
I think it was like 16 million. So that's not the whole 100.
No.
So, I'm sure there's
producers. I'm sure are getting a lot. Writers.
Yeah, and all
are getting a couple 100,000, I would guess.
Yeah, and whatever they have, I don't know, with the celebrities if they have to.
No, you don't get paid for press, so I don't think any of the celebrities are getting paid.
Or just like, I don't know.
They're getting paid for handlers. Yeah, like
the makeup and
yeah, you have a staff
the green
person.
room and all that they have to.
Yeah, but I'm guessing big time celebrities have their own, like they bring their own. They're not going to use a staff person the way I do when I go to Fox News.
Mm-hmm. It just seems like they could have maybe figured something out for less money, but I don't know. This seems like something else. Like they're just trying to silence.
I'm guessing they couldn't have shaved that much money off because of union rules, though.
Yeah, so it's definitely possible.
But many of those younger viewers were the first ones out the door as digital and streaming options proliferated. Although many genres of American television have successfully made the leap to streaming, sports, primetime scripted shows, reality series, even soap operas, far fewer people watch entire episodes of topical talk shows on platforms like Paramount Plus, Peacock, and Hulu. I hate late night talk shows. I find them so fucking boring. Like I am dying to have one just because I want to make it interesting again. But and it's interesting because I used to love David Letterman. Like when I was a little girl, I'm talking like 4 years old, I had a rule in my house where I had to go to sleep at like a certain time, like before David Letterman came on. But my mom would like let me, she would like attempt to wake me up when David Letterman was on, and if I woke up, I was allowed to watch it, Wonder why I have such a wild sleep schedule to this day. But, I have absolutely no problem falling asleep at any time. I could fall asleep right now on this desk easily. But yeah, like that's how much I used to love late night talk shows and David Letterman and, like weird, pet tricks and just like, and moments of like Drew Barrymore getting up on the desk and showing Letterman her tits, like moments that were iconic. And it's just not, like talk show is just so boring these days, which is why I really, really loved, I don't know if you guys follow Meg Stalter. I know her and a little bit, and she's, I've just been so like loving watching her press run for Too Much, because to me, she's bringing performance back to being a performer in the best way. And it's the first time I've, eagerly watched a late night clip or segment in quite some time. So shout out to her for a great job on that. And her film Cora Bora just came out on Netflix. So she's just like having an absolutely amazing moment right now that I hope continues for a long, long time. Instead, people increasingly consume the shows in bite-sized clips on YouTube and social media platforms. That's certainly how I consume it. The hosts themselves have not been shy about the difficult landscape. I don't know if there will be any late-night television shows on network TV in 10 years, Jimmy Kimmel, the ABC late-night host, said a year ago. In May, The Daily Show host Jon Stewart likened himself to the manager of a Tower record store in an era with Spotify and YouTube. People are always going to want music, but I'm still the guy who's like, come into my giant building and let me show you the new CD rack, he said on a podcast. Over the past couple of years, many of the surviving late-night shows cut their budgets. Network late-night shows now generally produce 4 new episodes a week, down from 5 in an attempt to save money. Late Night with Seth Meyers now frequently tapes 2 episodes on Mondays to limit filming to 3 days a week. The Late Show began losing money at least 3 years ago, 2 people familiar with the finances said. Like The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon on NBC, it costs more than $100 million a year to produce. CBS executives weighed the possibility of trying to find ways to sharply reduce its budget, to answer your question, AJ, but amid the mounting losses, concluded that there was not a viable path to profitability, one of the people said. So I think like they're saying like, yeah, maybe we could shave, a couple million off, but ultimately, we want profit and we see no way to make profit that makes this worth our effort. Again, that's what this article is saying. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with it. I think it's probably a little bit of both is the answer to the actual reality of it. it was just particularly interesting to me that the New York Times leaned so much into the profitability and not into anything about a larger political agenda. And just to me, it's like just like this like conservative, it's like conservative movement almost of the New York Times. It's like New York Times used to really represent young New York, and it's almost like New York's newspaper is like aging and becoming more of a moderate or even more of a conservative with the Times. It's like, they mentioned the possible political agenda, but like only in a blip. And so, it's just, I just wonder these days, who is the New York Times really for anymore? On Thursday, Mr. Colbert completed taping nearly the entire episode before he convened a staff meeting where he broke the news, leaving the employees floored. Mr. Colbert then went back on stage and told his audience the news, remarks that would be the new opening to that edition of The Late Show and soon ricochet all over social media. I'm just as shocked as everyone, Mr. Fallon, the NBC host, posted on Friday. Stephen is one of the sharpest, funniest hosts to ever do it. He continued, I really thought I'd ride this out with him for years to come. Yeah, because now Jimmy's shaking in his boots. But Jimmy is kind of always constantly made fun of for not being overly political and kind of just being a goofball and yucking it up. But again, like that's kind of what people, want. When on social media right now, we see people who either are like crazy, crazy political, but in a really divisive way, or people who are like falling on banana peels. And there's really nothing in between. And certainly hard for a Libra like myself to navigate that path. Because you're like, well, I'm not going to turn into like a shit bag with a divisive point of view that's going to contribute to this culture of us all fucking hating each other. I don't care if that'll make me more famous. I'm not interested in it. That's why I said no to that Tim Pool. I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not being part of that. Like, stop. But it's frustrating when you think that you provide some kind of a voice of sanity, which I do think I do, even if you don't agree with me. And again, I'm not saying I'm providing the smartest, most professorial, highest brow take, but I think I'm talk things out, in a way that many liberals are afraid to because of getting canceled, but also in a way that's just like, it's disgusting what the Trump administration is doing. And I think that you can have a conversation both ways and not just have to like go along with the talking points of your party. All right, moving on. Main story again this week. It's still, again, I said it, Colbert, I think, is one of like the main stories, but the other main story would be Epstein. So let's all hitch a plane right now to Epstein Island. I found this really, really interesting piece, kind of like the origin story, if you will, of the Epstein scandal. They did a piece in what the hell is this? This is, sorry, I had to put it all into another platform. So this is from Daily Beast, I believe. I can tell from how this is. So this is from Daily Beast, and this article says how the endless Epstein scandal began with a teenage schoolyard squabble. This is by Michael Daly. So this is just kind of an interesting, like, boop, boop, boop. Think of it as a prequel if we're thinking about the Epstein saga as a film franchise. The long lead up to the ongoing MAGA civil war over the supposed Epstein files can be traced back 2 decades to a February 2005 fight in gym class between a 14-year-old and her best friend at Royal Palm Beach High School. And this to me, like, ooh, what an interesting start to like some kind of a Netflix series or something. They're probably already making it. This tussle between 2 public school girls in their early teens triggered an extended series of events that would see Epstein commit suicide in prison, supposedly. Look at the pictures of his cell. Looks like there was a struggle to me. And leave Prince Andrew in disgrace, along with ex-JP Morgan CEO Jess Staley. And this makes me think of that larger conversation about how women gossiping, not about fucking other women, but women gossiping, talking about how much they get paid, talking about things that are happening in the workplace, et cetera, with men, et cetera, and how valuable to society female gossip is, and why it is so frowned upon by men. And often you'll see men say things on, social media. And this is a comment I get all the time on like Guys We Fucked and stuff about, you're almost 40 sitting there talking like a teenager. It's because men, whether it is in the front of their brain or in the fucking back of their brain, know deep down the power of female gossip. It has been historically proven how powerful it is when women talk to each other and convey what's going on. It has been. It's called gossip because like people love to belittle any conversation we have with each other. Have you ever fucking heard two straight men's conversation described as gossip? Because I sure as hell haven't. And please, I've had many straight boyfriends that men do love to gossip, so don't even play with me like you guys don't. But it's just yet this other tactic that society uses to belittle conversations between women so that we don't pay attention to them, so that we think they're silly, so that we think they're unimportant. And that paragraph here just made me think of that. So your conversations are important, and it is important to get the skinny for women, and it is important to know what's going on financially or safety-wise in your workplace. But yes, don't gossip about other women. That's not what we want to do with our gossip time. The then U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta in Florida prosecuted the first federal case against Epstein and went on to become President Donald Trump's first Secretary of Labor. Interesting. Only to resign after the Miami Herald reported that he had entered into a disgracefully lenient plea deal amounting to house arrest in Epstein's case. Others who have been muddied just by associating with Epstein include Microsoft founder Bill Gates, a host of public figures from former President Bill Clinton to attorney Alan Dershowitz have been the subject of conspiracy theories regarding a client list that may well not exist. Incoming U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced that she would be releasing the Epstein files, but when that was delayed, she reported she had them on her desk and would soon make the contents known. She then said that there was nothing significant to release. Or to reveal, sorry. FBI Deputy Director Don Bongino, who has long joined Bondi and Trump himself in trading on baseless conspiracy theories, threatened to resign if Bondi did not step down. Trump stuck by Bondi and said too much energy was being expended on the Epstein mess. He suggested that grumbling among the usually blindly loyal Trumpoids was the work of the Democrats. Well, we need to be doing something. He thereby sought to assuage unhappy MAGA conspiracy theorists with a conspiracy theory. And all that followed a March 14th, 2005 phone call by the 14-year-old stepmother to the Palm Beach Police Department. Whatever is not or is not in law enforcement files about Epstein, the very first entry in the very first file begins there. The very first Jane Doe one, to be followed by others in years of subsequent cases. The stepmother felt that there was some kind of sexual activity, Palm Beach Detective Joe Riccari told the grand jury. Jane Doe 1 had gotten into a fight at Royal Palm Beach High School. After the fight, Theory had discovered $300 in her purse. She had told them that she received it from a man in Palm Beach. Detective Michelle Pagan went to the school and interviewed Jane. The teen told the detective and later the grand jury that she had confided in her best friend during their first period dance class that she had received $300 from a wealthy older man for giving him a massage over the weekend. I told her, if you ever want to make $300, you can come with me, Jane later testified, and all you have to do is give him a massage and stuff, and I told her what I did. Jane added, I didn't tell her everything I did. I didn't tell her the vibrator part. I just left that out, but I told her everything else. But the friend told somebody, who who told somebody, which let the haters call it gossip, or what I will call it is women getting things done, protecting each other, realizing that something isn't right with the story that your friend told you, and getting help before it happens to other people. The whole school seemed to buzz with it when Jane encountered her friend at gym class. I confronted her, Jane testified. I was like, well, why are you telling people? And that's kind of my business. And I told you to be nice and not to go around telling people. You're supposed to be my best friend. Jane continued, and she just laughed about it. So then we got into an altercation. Okay, this part is just Mean Girls. But I was like, telling like your stepmom, that's good. Telling everyone at school, that's Hunty. The two ended up in the office of the assistant principal for freshmen, who asked why they had been fighting. At first, we both kind of lied about it, Jane testified. Jane tried telling the principal that her friend had been spreading rumors about her. But then Jane said her friend told the principal, why, like, for real? And so then the principal, she was like, let me see in your purse, Jane told the grand jury. And I said, why? And then she said, you don't have to lie. You're not going to be in trouble. Give me your purse. Jane continued, and then I gave her my purse, and she found the $300, and she asked me how I got it. Jane tried to say it was from her job at Chick-fil-A, but she only worked 10 hours a week, the maximum for a 14-year-old. She did not earn enough to make the lie convincing. She said, you don't have to lie. I know what happened, Jane recalled. The principal called Jane's stepmother, who came to the school. The stepmother said there was no way the $300 came from Jane's paycheck. I said I was doing drugs and I was dealing them, Jane testified. Like I made up any kind of lie. I didn't want to tell them what happened. And that just goes to show how bad this actually was. When you think that that the lie that's going to get you out of trouble is that you were dealing drugs and also doing drugs, that's how bad the shit that was going on with Epstein was. But Jane ended up telling the truth to the police or how scared she was of the people. How much they said, you better not fucking tell anyone, like the fear that they must have ingrained into her. But Jane ended up telling the truth to the police and to the grand jury. She testified that they had met an older teenage girl at a family football thing in the nearby home of her boyfriend's aunt. This is why I can't hang out with extended family. It was just kind of like a regular night. And we were hanging out watching TV, she recalled. And the older teenager was like, what are you doing tomorrow? I said, nothing. And then she was like, oh, well, do you want to make like $200? And I was like, yeah, sure. And then she was like, well, you're going to have to meet my friend Jeffrey. And he lives in a big, humongous mansion. And like he lives on the water. And I was like, that's really cool. Jane continued, and then she's like, but you have to give him a massage for like 40 minutes. And that's all you have to do and get like $200 for it. And it's really easy. And I was like, okay, like whatever. It's just a massage. Jane testified that her boyfriend tried to dissuade her. I guess because I was 14, she testified, he was like, don't go. And I was like, well, it's $200. And I was 14. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, great business plan for Jeffrey Epstein here. Like giving a massage that's not pedophilia for $200 for 40 minutes is not even a good deal. Jane recalled that she told her father she was going to the mall when the older teenager picked her up and drove her to Epstein's humongous waterfront mansion the next morning, a Sunday. The older teen led her in through the kitchen. She met Epstein. Old, Jane would reply when a grand juror asked what he looked like. Fucking hilarious. And the thing is, like, Jeffrey Epstein actually didn't even look old when he died. I think he, aesthetically, he was in a very good shape for a man of his age. But just like, yeah, when you're 14, a person who's 30 looks old. Jane recalled that Epstein was wearing a polo t-shirt and khaki pants, like he was going golfing. They shook hands. Can you imagine that? Just like shaking hands on with a 14-year-old you're about to molest? Like, ugh. Then Jeffrey said, who's going to go first, Jane recalled. And the other girl's like, I don't care. And then Jeffrey's like, how about you, pointing to me. Epstein was now wearing only a towel. He had sought to cover himself by asking the older girl to assure him that Jane was 18, though she was clearly not. I was a little shrimp, didn't have boobs, and didn't look 18 at all, Jane told the Daily Beast in 2015. My face, the way I spoke, and my body didn't look like I was 18. There's very few 14-year-olds who look 18. In fact, I don't know that I've ever met one. She still had braces, and she was so short she could reach across the massage table, climbing up on it. She could reach, okay. But that suited Epstein fine after he instructed her to strip down to her thong panties. Ugh. As she gave Epstein the massage, he told her to get on his back, a police affidavit says. Jane stated she straddled herself on Epstein's back, whereby she exposed her buttocks. Her exposed buttocks were touching Epstein's bare buttocks. Epstein was specific in his instruction to her on how to massage him, telling her to go clockwise or counterclockwise. The affidavit continues, Epstein then turned to his side and started to rub his penis in an up and down motion. Epstein then pulled out a purple vibrator. Jane left with $300 bills, the added one for watching him masturbate and allowing him to apply the vibrator outside her panties. And he told me, thank you, Jane recalled. He asked her to write down her name and phone number. And then after that, he just left the room and told me I could get dressed again and that it was done. It was over. At dance class the next morning, Jane confided in her best friend and then came to fight in gym class that landed... And then came the fight in gym class that landed them in the assistant principal's office. Thank God for gossip. Then the stepmother phoned the police, and there was the very first entry into what might be collectively called law enforcement's Epstein files. The next edition was a report by Detective Pagan, who showed her a picture of Epstein. Jane confirmed that was the man and described what he had done. She was later asked in the grand jury why she had Pagan would, this sentence is wrong. She was later asked in the grand jury why, there's a word missing, something about Epstein masturbating, but she had initially said nothing about it should say told, why she had told Pagan about Epstein masturbating, but had initially said nothing about the vibrator. That's his body, and the vibrator's on my body, she replied. Someone's being a little too autonomous here. Jane never went back to the mansion. The Palm Beach police ended up interviewing dozens of underage victims who had. There were more in New York and elsewhere, but Epstein was essentially given a pass until 2019. Big period of time there when he was indicted by the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York for sex trafficking dozens of underage girls between 2002 and 2005, Jane among them. He was remanded, but was found dead in his cell at the now shuttered Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan before he could stand trial, almost certainly a suicide. Again, it's not crazy for someone who's done a lot of bad things to commit suicide rather than dealing with it head on. If the widespreadness of the harm you have done. But I mean, this picture is quite peculiar. They have a picture of this room and it looks ransacked. So it's very odd, but that became the stuff of conspiracy theories involving the Epstein files, which go back 2 decades to a high school gym class fight between a 14-year-old victim and her best friend. Unlike the fight, they seem to be without end. So again, I just thought that was a really interesting story. Let me see. How long have we been going? AJ?
Hour 41.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, oh my God, there's so much more I wanted to talk about. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead to this this article from today from the Washington Post. Trump survived many scandals, but the Epstein story poses a new threat, right? Because so many people, this is the breaking point for him. Them not releasing the Epstein files, this is the thing for some reason, out of all the lies and all of the harm and all of the cuts and all of the changes, this is the thing that is really pissing off rich people. This is the thing that's pissing off, people, the loud voices on the right who got you to vote for Trump, or possibly slightly influenced you to vote for Trump in the first place. And I think that's why, it's a problem, because the left is outraged about everything. And unfortunately, even though they have, the right to be outraged about almost everything that they've been outraged about, it becomes like the boy who cried wolf. It's like, well, you're outraged about everything, But I think it's interesting, now that we finally see people on the right, people who endorse this man, people who had this man on his podcast turning on him. I think people are finally like, oh, could this finally be the straw that breaks the camel's back? So Trump survived many scandals, but the Epstein story poses a new test. The MAGA base has rallied as they see him under attack. The White House is trying to change the subject. Nearly 2 weeks after President Donald Trump and this is by Natalie Allison. Nearly 2 weeks after President Donald Trump and his administration announced that they had nothing more to say about Jeffrey Epstein's criminal case, the topic continues to dog him, presenting a potential new political liability at the 6-month mark of his presidency as Trump tries to sell more Americans on his accomplishments. And right before I sat down in the studio today, I saw an article about how Donald Trump is mandating that all the sports teams who renamed their teams to get off of to make them not racist have to go back to the racist names. That's his newest mandate that he proposed today. Always the important stuff. The uproar around Epstein escalated Thursday with a report in the Wall Street Journal that focused attention on Trump's own relationship with him. And just if you guys didn't see that, the Wall Street Journal is currently getting sued. And I know they were holding this for a long ass time. But it's this really crazy excerpt from a letter that Donald Trump supposedly included in Jeffrey Epstein's 50th birthday book. Like all his friends sent a letter for this 50th birthday book that they were putting together, apparently. And this is just an excerpt from the letter that Donald Trump put in it for Jeffrey Epstein. It says, quote, voiceover, there must be more to life than having everything, the note began. Donald, yes, there is, but I won't tell you what it is. And so basically, it was an imaginary conversation. The letter was an imaginary conversation between Donald Trump and Epstein, written in the third person. Just so you're wondering why it's written like a movie script. But this is what he submitted for Trump submitted for Epstein's birthday book. So again, voiceover. There must be more to life than having everything. The note began. Donald, yes, there is, but I won't tell you what it is. Jeffrey, nor will I, since I also know what it is. Donald, we have certain things in common, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, yes, we do come to think of it. Donald, enigmas never age. Have you noticed that? Jeffrey, as a matter of fact, it was clear to me the last time I saw you. Trump, a pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret. I mean, if that does not just send shivers down your spine, we have many things in common that we cannot talk. Ew, disgusting. And of course, the Wall Street Journal published a bunch, that, and I think it seems like they've been holding on to it for a while, and they're getting sued now. But I mean, I don't think they just made that up. All right. So the uproar around Epstein escalated Thursday with a report in the Wall Street Journal that focused attention on Trump's own relationship with him. It's the latest scandal to touch a public figure who has weathered many of them, both in and out of office, yet managed to return to Washington after his 2020 defeat with even more power than before. Despite the clamor surrounding Epstein from within the president's political base and beyond, there is no indication so far that this is the scandal that will sink Trump any more than the Access Hollywood tape of 2016 or being found guilty in a criminal trial last year over hush money payments to a porn star. Trump won presidential elections after both. But Epstein clearly has posed a problem for the White House. At minimum, it has been a distraction at a time when Trump wants to tout his legislative victories. If it continues to grab public attention, it could pose a more significant threat at a time when Trump's standing with the public already has been on the decline, though polling shows him steady with his own party. Trump lashed out at the Journal's story after it was published, threatening to sue both the newspaper and its owner, Rupert Murdoch, who has been an important, although inconstant, political ally. The next day, he filed a libel lawsuit in federal court in southern Florida, alleging the article defamed him. Trump's handling of concerns related to Epstein, the wealthy child sex predator who died in jail in 2019, recently provoked a rare eruption among the president's most loyal supporters, prompting MAGA leaders leaders to caution that some in Trump's base could become disillusioned enough to sit out the midterm elections. Many Americans believe the U.S. government has hidden information on possible associates of Epstein who may also have committed sex crimes against minors. Some have also questioned the official ruling that Epstein's death was a suicide. A Reuters Ipsos poll conducted Tuesday and Wednesday found 60% of Americans think the government is hiding details about Epstein's death, including 55% of Republicans, and 69% said the federal government is hiding details about Epstein's clients, including 62% of Republicans. The belief that others took part in Epstein's abuse of minors was especially prominent among some of the president's strongest supporters, who believed Trump would expose the corruption upon retaking office. The Justice Department's announcement this month that there were no more files from Epstein's case that warranted release caused intense anger among those people and among some MAGA influencers. At least among prominent MAGA figures, however, the Journal article has triggered a now familiar reaction, causing Trump's fractured base to quickly rally around him as a victim. That has quieted much of the recent MAGA frustration, at least for now. This is primarily a within MAGA problem, Whit Aries, a longtime Republican pollster, said of the Epstein situation. The vast majority of Americans don't spend every waking moment wondering what happened to Epstein. And that's for sure. And this goes into also, it's I think a lot of people who are vocal and rich are going to be the people who are upset about this because this is something that they wanted to know, and they love goss on other rich people. Speaking of, men loving gossip. And then also, the left, is critical of basically everything Trump does. So this is just kind of added to the pile. And also I don't think expected him to make good on his word. The other group of Americans among whom the Epstein case could pose a problem for Trump, however, are the less partisan, more disengaged occasional voters, among whom Trump did extremely well during the 2024 campaign. Even before the Epstein case, Trump had been losing ground among such voters. And so infrequent voters are going to be especially, influenced by things like a big promise that you lied about, because I'm guessing if you're someone who's an inconsistent voter, part of the reason that you're an inconsistent voter is because you do not have faith in the establishment at large. You just don't have faith in the system, and so you don't participate in the system. A characteristic quality of such voters is disaffection from the political system, there you go, and suspicion that it favors the wealthy and well-connected. The Epstein case plays into those voters' existing feelings and could cause some who have supported Trump to lose faith in him. Democrats have tried to capitalize on that, seizing on the issue and calling for the Trump administration to release files about the Epstein case. At least so far, however, not many voters have been closely tuned in to news about the case, although online research traffic has increased sharply in recent days. A Quinnipiac University poll conducted over the past week found that a relatively small share of voters, 2 in 10, said they were following news about the Epstein files, quote, very closely. And again, so this stat aligns with what I have been saying, that it's just the average person has bigger fish to fry. And it's not saying that a pedophilia, ring is not a big fish. It's just saying that it's not, we get so wrapped up in these things that do not directly affect most Americans. And that does not mean that's not important. It doesn't mean that these victims don't deserve justice. Not at all. But it's just yet another thing that is not helping Americans put a roof over their head and food into their mouths. Top right-wing commentators over the past week issued negative predictions, some dire, about Republicans losing down-ballot seats in next year's midterm elections. Some longtime MAGA supporters felt betrayed that Trump was not sufficiently going after the so-called deep state. They warned, while other newcomers to the movement, including young men who were not previously politically active, would simply be disenchanted and not bother to show up again to the polls. By the end of the week, most of those warnings from prominent Trump supporters had quieted, replaced by solidarity behind the president. Among those recently sounding the alarm was Stephen K. Bannon, Trump's former advisor who hosts a daily talk show popular with Trump's MAGA supporters. Bannon and other prominent right-wing commentators Friday were still calling for the administration to release more files on Epstein and to appoint a special counsel, which the White House has said Trump will not do. But they directed their chief ire at a familiar enemy, the news media. This time, it was towards Murdoch, the owner of the Wall Street Journal, and a number of other conservative-leaning news outlets, including Fox News. Bannon has long argued that Murdoch, despite his conservative credentials, was out to take down Trump politically. MAGA is now united because they can see there's a common enemy. They see exactly what the reality is. It's the deep state with their media partners, led by Murdoch. That's out to destroy Trump, Bannon told the Washington Post, framing the saga as a conspiracy against the president rather than about the White House decision-making on Epstein. And that's been obvious from the beginning. And when we're talking about podcasting now, especially after it was outed that Tim Pool was being paid by Russia to have a specific point of view, I also would be wary of a lot of these podcasters, right? Because they saw what we did. They understand the influence that podcasts have started to have on elections. They know, especially Republicans are watching what people are doing, and they know that people have stopped paying attention to the news, which once again, I will reiterate it 5,000 times, is legally held to a specific journalistic standard. So again, they can't be outright lying to you. They have to be reporting some semblance of the truth, even if certain parts are left out or blown out of proportion, as opposed to podcasts that have zero standards for journalistic integrity. You can say whatever you want. You can be paid to say certain things. And, it starts with people hawking products that don't work. You don't think that's going to then lead to being paid to promote ideas? Of course it is. Of course it is. So just really be careful. You think these people are out to bring you the truth. And maybe in the beginning they were, and then they were offered a paycheck. So, I just wonder, it's are all these people being paid? Is the White House paying them? Is Trump paying podcasters? I'm sure he probably is. So I just don't know what's going on here, but just be really wary. And I guess the very best thing you can do is just take in stuff from a variety of sources. I think that's really your best defense, so that you're not only taking it in from one source or one perspective. Yes, AJ.
I was just going to ask, do you think because Rupert Murdoch, who started Fox News, is, the owner of the Wall Street Journal, do you think that's the Fox News and Trump rift, is that going to get crazier?
I mean, anything involving Trump is going to get
It's just weird
crazier.
that now Fox News, which is part of this lawsuit, is now is that going to start affecting the rights, news source?
Yeah, I mean, everything is affected, and that's why I just again, if you're taking on a new news source, it's important to know who's funding that news source, what their perspective is. Again, it's I know, and it's we don't have all the hours in the day to do this, but it does affect it. And again, that's why I just my recommendation is always kind of just go to a couple places and just go, especially if it's something you're really interested in and want to start talking about a lot, or before you get yourself overly heated about something, go to a couple places and see let me get an overall scan of what's happening here.
But also realize who's the owners of all of them. For example, Wall Street Journal, Fox News, and New York Post. That's all Murdoch. So just you have to realize that. But what I was going to also bring
they're all right leaning. I mean, obviously Fox is more right leaning than Wall Street Journal. But yes, but it's interesting that Wall Street Journal is then posting things, of course, that's attacking Trump. Yeah. I
was just going to say, do you see about the doodle in the letter? The controversy with the doodle.
I know there was a picture of a woman, but what else was
well,
there?
it was kind of reminiscent of when Prince Andrew had said, I don't sweat. Remember his defense, for sweating, he said, I don't sweat. And that was kind of a red flag because there's a lot of pictures of him sweating profusely on the internet. Anyway, Trump says, I don't draw. He's I don't doodle, I don't draw. And then the internet found out that.
When did he say, I don't draw? Why do we know that about the president, that he doesn't doodle? Why do we know such inane facts about this man?
Because that's his response to this letter, the Epstein letter, where he wrote that creepy stuff. There was the doodle there, so he's like, "Oh, this dismisses the whole thing because I don't doodle."
Everyone knows that about me. I'm not a doodler.
Yeah,
what?
Exactly. But
he's a diddler.
So I don't know if you can see on the screen here, but it says Trump says he doesn't draw pictures, but many of his sketches were sold at auction. So here's an example of a specific doodle of his that was sold at auction.
Do we have the doodle that is in the Epstein letter?
I can look for it.
Yeah, because then compare the styles and see if that's because,
it's just weird when you say I don't draw. I've never drawn.
Well, but he always says stuff like that, and then we can go back and find it. I mean, he said about the Texas floods that nothing has happened like that in 500 to 1,000 years, and it's extremely easy to find out that something exactly like that happened 38 years ago. Literally in my lifetime.
Yeah, I just think that might be just being uninformed, but this, but
it's alarming, AJ, that the president is ill-informed about one of the states he oversees.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you there. I'm just saying that if people are, believing in, if his base is believing what he's saying, and then if they're just being lied to like this, where it just kind of eventually it's fool me once, you're gonna be okay, I think I'm just being lied to. I'm being played for a fool. I think eventually
this is fool me 467 million times.
Yeah, I just think eventually they're gonna start to be okay, we're being made to be idiots here.
Well, finally, yeah.
If just more little things were just a blatant lie cover.
Better late than ever, I suppose. Prominent conservatives were quick to mock the allegations raised against Trump, posting their own stick figure drawings of women as a nod to the journals reporting that Trump's 50th birthday card to Epstein included an apparent hand-drawn outline of a naked woman. Trump allies and even one recent high-profile enemy, Elon Musk, also quickly dismissed the alleged text included in the card, saying it did not sound like something Trump would write. Yeah, because it was too creative, probably. Trump and his White House advisors have expressed annoyance for much of the past 2 weeks at the continued focus on Epstein. Fresh off a July 4th signing of Trump's One Big Beautiful bill, which the White House has touted as the fulfillment of some of Trump's campaign promises, the president and his team have wanted to talk about anything else. I have had more success in 6 months than perhaps any president in our country's history. And all these people want to talk about, with strong prodding by the fake news and the success-starved Dems, is the Jeffrey Epstein hoax. It's so funny when he gets really angry about things. Trump wrote on Truth Social earlier this week. By Thursday night, that aggravation had turned to anger, with Trump vowing to sue Murdoch and the Wall Street Journal over the reporting on a letter he said was fake. While Trump and his administration have insisted that the general public is not concerned about Epstein or their review of documents related to him, recent polling shows that voters across the spectrum question his handling of the case. The Reuters Ipsos poll found 54% of Americans disapproved of how Trump was handling the issue, while just 17% approved. Republicans were split on Trump's handling of the issue, with 35% approving, 30% disapproving, and 35% unsure or not answering the question. President Trump is the proud leader of the MAGA movement and currently has record high support among Republicans, White House spokeswoman Liz Houston said in a statement, adding that Trump is quickly delivering on promises and describing America as the hottest country ever as a result. That's just the hottest country has entered the villa. White House officials in recent days have repeatedly touted a recent CNN poll that shows Trump's approval rating notching up slightly among Republicans. The same survey, however, shows just over 60% of all voters opposing Trump's new spending bill. I don't know that he's worried about the general electorate at all at this point, Ayers said, adding that the latest news story about Trump and Epstein seems to help Trump with his base because it creates a typical enemy. But it doesn't resolve the fundamental issue of the Epstein files, Ayers continued, and what they will or will not release to the public. Emily Guskin and Scott Clement contributed to this report. And then it's funny because you think, oh, what's the government fucking response going to be to this? And then Mother Jones puts this out that says the State Department guts its office combating human trafficking. Good response there. This is by Pima Levy for Mother Jones. As President Donald Trump takes a beating from his own MAGA crowd for his handling of the case of Jeffrey Epstein, the deceased pedophile and sex trafficker, his State Department, again, I think it's he would be, it's really a hebephile, but okay. How low did Jeffrey Epstein go? His State Department pulled a surprising move. It decimated its office combating human trafficking. Oh my God, sorry, one second. I just have to look up the amount of times that I've had to Google. Yeah. And I never I like to say hebephile because hebephile just sounds like someone who doesn't like Jews. Yeah, so hebephilia, it's 11 to 14, which is what seems like, he was getting into. I'm like, well, I don't think people will even give me a pronunciation on this. Ew, stop.
Hebephile.
Yeah, Oh, it is hebephile. Damn it.
Hebephile.
Okay. All right. Well, I was saying it right, but it sounded anti-Semitic. Okay. As part of downsizing, the Trump administration on Friday cut 1,353 positions at state, about 15% of its Washington-based staff, and the largest reduction in decades. This reduction in force targeted foreign policy goals that don't align with MAGA values. This included closing or eviscerating entire offices that promote democracy, combat genocide and violent extremism, help resolve armed conflicts, and support women's rights. Among them was the Office to Monitor and Combat Trafficking in Persons, known as the TIP office. For 25 years, the TIP office has worked to combat human sex and labor trafficking around the world. Its remit includes producing an annual report as required by Congress that grades every country on the issue. Those that fail can face economic repercussions from the U.S., putting teeth into the government's efforts to end trafficking. This year's report was due on June 30th, but has not been released. The TIP office also works with local partners around the world to strengthen civil society groups, train prosecutors, and help other countries combat trafficking. The office's mission, including managing tens of millions of dollars for these programs, has always had bipartisan support. Secretary of State Marco Rubio submitted his reorganization plan for the State Department to Congress in April, but stopped its implementation after a federal judge in California halted such plans across 22 agencies. Last Tuesday, the Supreme Court lifted that injunction, and state rushed ahead with its reduction in force on Friday. According to reorganization plans shared ahead of time with state employees, workers in the TIP office expected a few job cuts, but believed their office would be demoted from a standalone entity into a component of the Office for Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor. Perhaps the fact that plans indicated they were being lumped into the category of democracy and human rights, ideas the Trump administration has sought to remove from the federal government's foreign policy and had targeted in the departmental reorganization, should have been a sign that things would not go well. Still, workers there were blindsided when about half of the office's full-time civil and foreign service employees received RIF notices on Friday. It goes on, but it's just, as this article points out later, politically, the timing of the cut is ironic as they are battling, this whole problem with the Epstein files and the myth that it would be released. All right. Let's end this episode with this story that I promised you earlier in the show about the city-run grocery store in Kansas City, which is interesting, with all the Democratic socialists who are doing well in elections, because this is certainly a socialist concept, and one that is, part of Zoran Mamdani's platform, one of his main points. So let's end on this right here. This says Kansas City. This is from the Washington Post. Kansas City poured millions into a grocery store. It still may close. More cities and states are experimenting with the concept of city-owned grocery stores, but these experiments often don't account for social issues. And I like that it's in the Washington Post, not the New York Times, because we all know the New York Times has a little bit of a vendetta against Zoran Mamdani. So it would almost seem like too obvious that was something that they were trying to give a nod to the people of New York about, but this feels a little bit more clean. This is by Annie Gowan. Kansas City, Missouri. It was the lone tomato in the produce bin that nearly made Marquita Taylor weep. Oh, I love the way the left writes. She'd stop in her neighborhood grocery store, the place that was cause for celebration when it opened 7 years ago. Area residents had long lived without a decent supermarket on Kansas City's east side, and KC Sunfresh was the city's attempt to alleviate a lack of access to healthy food in its urban center. But the store, in a city-owned strip mall, is on the verge of closure. Customers say they are increasingly afraid to shop there, even with visible police patrols, because of drug dealing, theft, and vagrancy, both inside and outside the store and the public library across the street. All right. KC Sunfresh lost $885,000 last year and now has only about 4,000 shoppers a week. That's down from 14,000 a few years ago, according to Emmett Pearson Jr., who leads Community Builders of Kansas City, the nonprofit that leases the site from the city. Despite a recent $750,000 cash infusion from the city, the shelves are almost bare. We're in a dire situation, Pearson said. Our co-host is back. As grocery prices continue to climb and 7 million Americans face losing federal food assistance, more cities and states across the country in Illinois, Georgia, and Wisconsin are experimenting with the concept of publicly supported grocery stores as a way to help provide for low-income neighborhoods. Zoran Mamdani, the Democratic candidate for mayor of New York City, has attracted attention for his campaign pledge to combat out-of-control prices by establishing 5 city-owned supermarkets that he says will pass savings on to customers by operating without a profit motive. Yes, yet these experiments, like the one in Kansas City, often don't account for social issues that can make success even more challenging. Critics say the efforts are unrealistic regardless because grocery stores have such slim profit margins and struggle to compete with the prices offered by big box chains like Walmart. I mean, we don't have a Walmart in New York City, so it would be different. But high-profile projects have failed in recent months in Florida and Massachusetts. Running a grocery store is a difficult business. That's the part for me that is the red flag because city-run things in general in New York City, there's plenty of them, and they're not great. So it's like my thought would be let's clean up what we already have instead of adding something else on. But again, that's not a cool thing to say when you're running. That's not exciting for people. People want new, said Doug Roush, a former Trader Joe's president who founded a chain of low-cost stores in the Boston area that shuttered in May. Yeah, my campaign promise was I'm going to deliver a Trader Joe's to the Bronx. That was my resolution. You can have religion about the missions, but if you don't have vast experience and knowledge about how to run these operations, you're really going to be in trouble. Taylor, 68, has supported the KC Sunfresh since it opened just blocks from her home, but that solitary tomato was almost too much to bear. This is pathetic, she said, shaking her head as she pushed her cart down the aisle. Every neighborhood deserves a good grocery store. This is the nearest store for 6 neighborhoods, and this is what we've got. And that is true. And the quality of grocery stores in lower income neighborhoods, even in Manhattan, lower income areas of Manhattan, Harlem, which is not all low income, but where I was living, again, I've talked about how it was, when I moved there, it was a food desert, certainly a desert for fresh produce. And, I wasn't even the first couple of times I bought produce in Harlem, I was like, I'm never doing this again. And I would buy my produce downtown. and then just transport it up. But like everyone isn't going all over the city every day like I am, and nor do they have time to do that if they have a family. Nearly a decade ago, Kansas City spent $17 million to buy and fix up the moribund Linwood Shopping Center on busy Prospect Avenue. KC Sunfresh opened in 2018 with a salad bar, fresh shrimp on ice, and flower bouquets. We were thrilled, Taylor recalled. The store was first run by a private grocer. Pearson's nonprofit took over in 2022. Sales were okay at first, but after the pandemic, crime rose and sales began to plummet. Police data shows assaults, robberies, and shoplifting in the immediate vicinity have been on an upward trend since 2020. Shoplifting cases have nearly tripled. At a community meeting last year, Pearson played videos of security incidents so graphic he gave a warning in advance. A naked woman parading through the store throwing bags of chips to the ground. I mean, that sounds like 100% something that would happen in New York City because it happens on the subway. Another person urinating in the vestibule. That would happen too. And a couple fornicating on the lawn of the library in broad daylight. I mean, that doesn't really seem like a problem, but okay. Advocates like Taylor have accused the city of neglecting the property. Discussions about fixing a fence behind the store dragged on for months until it was repaired in early July, and the city just remedied the sewer stench that Taylor and others say has pervaded the store for weeks. Obviously, they don't feel like this is their responsibility or they don't care, she said. In May, after the city was slow to turn over the $750,000 in promised assistance to the store, residents from the racially mixed neighborhood stormed a council meeting waving signs that read, I need access to fresh food and cut the check. Gwendolyn Grant, president and chief executive of the Urban League of Greater Kansas City, called on Mayor Quinton Lucas to stop lying and get the job done. Lucas, a Democrat in his second term, said in an interview that despite KC Sunfresh's financial issues, I still have confidence in the long-term future of a grocery facility in that area. AJ, while I'm finishing this, can you just do a quick search, even if it's just using ChatGPT, of the success of city-run grocery stores in America? Because this is obviously like, saying they're not great, but I want to see if we can find any success stories or like, or more importantly, the stats on like out of these grocery stores that are run by cities, which ones have we seen success in and where are they located in America? He sees two challenges. The first will be saving the current store. Changing consumer behavior will be another, he said. The issues defy quick solutions. The police department's East Side Patrol Division is just 4 blocks away. And like also what this article is talking about for me is like, okay, so this is a city-run grocery store in an area that is not doing well economically, right? So say we put 4 city-run grocery stores in New York City. I would have to look where he wanted to put them specifically, the locations. But like, let's say some of them are maybe like one is in an area that has a little bit more income and the other 4 in areas that don't. And, again, it's like not taking into account that there will be other things that you need to combat that don't just like, you can't just be like, okay, so we're going to have this grocery store and we're going to make the cost lower and everything's going to be fixed. Because you're not thinking about the crime rate. You're not thinking about like if people shoplift, how are they going to handle that? Like that is the problem with a lot of these ideas, like that they are, this idea of a utopia, or maybe like people look at them and they go, oh my God, that's a great idea. That is such a quick fix. Why have, that makes so much sense. Why has no one done this before? And it's like, well, no one's done it before because it's anything that seems like a quick fix really isn't. All right, so the issues defy quick solutions. The police departments, and it's like, okay, we just see the same areas suffering again and again. And so like maybe if in the more wealthy neighborhood this supermarket works out well and people behave, in quotes, nicely, and, everything stays in stock, those people will be under the impression that like, oh, look, this idea that we had worked and like, the poor's must be so happy and thriving, but like they're never going to go into those neighborhoods. So they're never going to see what's happening at those city-run grocery stores in the lower income areas. All right.
So I found that there's not really been any major success stories. There's a couple examples.
Really?
A lot of them are in like the pilot phases, and I see that there's a lot, that are starting up that might start next year. But there's a few that have failed, and due to like profitability. And
Well, but it's supposed to be no profit. But they're just saying there's like they're losing money.
yeah, they're losing money, and that's what I was trying to look up. I was trying to see like, are the prices actually better at these places? Because if you're like a wide, expansive company like Walmart, you might be able to just be able to have lower numbers. And I knew like when I worked at Best Buy,
Right.
like we had I learned that like, okay, like on the TVs, like the margins, like they make nothing off the TV prices. Like they make literally nothing. They make money off like other things that you don't know about. But like the margins are super tight already. So I just don't know if these city run grocery stores will be cheaper, even though that they're not trying to make profit. 'Cause
Right.
maybe they're not getting it for cheaper because they're not buying
Enough.
so much wholesale. you know?
Right. And that's interesting. Oh, also, I know Target, and I just like discovered this. Like my mom and I just discovered this from shopping. So there's 2 Targets in my hometown. One is in like a subsection where lower income people live, and then one is on like Route 22. Well, actually, I think that one's in Springfield. So they're not both in my hometown. One's in my hometown, but one's like right on the cusp of my hometown, and the prices are actually different. Like the prices at the Target in the lower income area are lower. So they also corporations sometimes do things like that they adjust the prices, which actually seems smart and like kind of fair, I guess. But smart move for a corporation, I suppose. The issues defy quick solutions. The police department's East Side Patrol Division is just 4 blocks away, though police, what is that, Major? Chris Young said that even an overwhelming presence of officers in recent months didn't significantly decrease incidents. Young, the patrol division's commander, links the rising crime to fallout from the pandemic, rising inflation, and a shortage of police officers following racial injustice protests in 2020. Oh God. I just had so much to say about that last sentence, but I don't have time to get into it. Part of the problem is the city's lack of a jail, Young said. The left-leaning council closed the previous facility in 2009 as a cost-saving measure, a move the Kansas City Star has called a $250 million mistake. And so people arrested for minor crimes are quickly released instead of being held in rural counties miles away. And so I'm guessing it's recidivism, which is a huge problem in New York City too, that no one on the left really wanted to talk about. Like super progressives don't want to talk about recidivism, right? Because it makes it because when you talk about it, like it's hard to talk about basically recidivism, but it's fucking happening. That allows them to hop on the local bus system free since the pandemic and head back to the same location, Young said. It's funny because again, this isn't the New York Times, but there still are elements of this that feel like it's a hit piece against Mamdani. That being said, AJ's research just shows, it also could be just like, hey, we're really worried about this idea this guy had. And again, this was an idea that never appealed to me. I thought it was a very dumb idea with all the things that we have. Like, I just think it's not a good idea. It's not a use of money. It's not a good use of time. And I don't think it's going to do well.
It might just be smaller impact than is made to seem. I think it's just like if you only have gas stations, you can buy food. There's now a grocery store that cheaper than a gas station, but it's not going to be cheaper than a Walmart or like a national chain.
Right, but we don't have Walmart here, so like again, like it could
any
it could
national
be.
chain, yeah.
And also
Costco is going to be cheaper.
But also it's like, so I live on the Lower East Side. Like I can go, but I live right on the cusp of the East Village, right? Technically I live in the East Village, but literally half my block is split. So right, so I have the choice to shop at Lower East Side markets or East Village markets, and the Lower East Side supermarket is actually cheaper, but it's not really that nice. And then I have a couple supermarkets, like there's a really nice one with that, like if I'm throwing a party, I'll go there to get fancy cheese or something. And then there's the middle of the road one, the Key Foods, which is where I go. That is a little bit nicer to shop in than the Lower East Side location, but is not so fancy as like the fancy, gourmet market where I'm going to be spending $20 more, per grocery run, if not more. Quite honestly. We typically have the same group of offenders every week that are recognizable by face and by name, just loitering and hanging out. He said a small percentage of people are ruining it for the rest of the community that deserves to go to their grocery store and their library. The city is making plans for a new jail, though construction could take years. A number of cities and states have tried to address food inequity over the years. Since 2019, the Healthy Food Financing Initiative at the U.S. Department of Agriculture has spent $25 million to fund 162 food retail and food retail supply chain projects around the country, with mixed results, analysts say. The agency did not provide data on which projects have worked and which haven't. Illinois has given out $16.5 million for new grocery stores since 2023. Chicago officials had a plan for a city-owned grocery store but dropped it despite a study concluding the idea was both feasible and necessary in favor of a plan for a public market with food stalls. And don't underestimate that, though, because actually at the caucus that I went to earlier this year, there was talk about how it really helped New Yorkers when they made food stamps and all those kind of like food stamps, SNAP, and all that kind of stuff. When they made that usable at fresh food markets, like that really improved people's access to food. Right. And SNAP, I mean, I guess I don't think everyone knows. SNAP is a supplemental nutrition assistance program. Let's see. Okay. In Boston, Roush founded a chain of 5 low-cost grocery stores called Daily Table, which sold only healthy food and avoided sugary snacks. The stores made about 75% of their budget from sales and covered the rest with private and public grants. There was also a discussion about that, because there have been attempt to only give low-income people the ability to use their government assistance on healthy food, but there was a lot of complaints from the people who use these resources being we want more options and we want to be able to decide what we are allowed to eat and stop being treated like children. So that was also something I learned at the caucus, because I went to this whole talk about food inequity. It ended up mostly being common sense things, but I thought those points were interesting.
They wanted candy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I understand it because, we like to get on our high horses and be like, well, if the government is providing it, it should only be healthy and stuff. But it's just the same as when you give a unhoused person food, they're allowed to say they don't like it, even though it kind of feels like, what? You're homeless, eat this. We're taking the humanness away from humans. We want to help, but we don't want to be overly inconvenienced by helping people. And we also want people to be helped on our terms. But unless you're Gwyneth Paltrow, all of us like snacks and ice cream and chips and stuff sometimes. And at the end of the day, you got it. You have to eat. And, for many of these people, these are the foods that they are used to eating. So you're asking them to all of a sudden only eat salmon and kale because that's what you think that they should be eating. It really is a big ask.
It's called the nutritional.
For sure. I get it, but I'm trying to kind of argue myself on it, right? Because we're just we always ask of, people in a lower economic standing to do things to hold themselves to standards that we don't even hold ourselves to. So it's just a little bit, it just feels like, you're treating them like a child. And at the end of the day, even though, yes, it would be better, and then people will start getting into the fight, and they're like, well, this is why I don't want universal health care, because then I'll have to pay for their poor health choices and them having diabetes. And it's okay, well, it's us neglecting these areas and these communities for years and years and years is why they have diabetes, not, because now when we decided to help them, they didn't buy kale and salmon with their SNAP. That's kind of what it is. After a dozen years, they were anticipating a banner 2025, Roush recounted, then the Trump administration / federal programs that aided nutrition assistance. Both the stores and their philanthropic partners were hit hard. We ran out of money, he said. The current freezing of funds at the USDA had a very chilling effect. Exploring public options for groceries remains a popular idea because of high prices and fears of more dramatic cuts in food assistance, said Margaret Mullins, Director of Public Options and Governance at the Vanderbilt Policy Accelerator, which recently released a guide to public grocery stores. Making sure people have access to fresh food is really, really important, Mullins said. So even though it's tough, people keep turning to this public support idea because what else can they do? And I think that really is what socialism is about. To me, socialism is we're all starting to turn there because what else can we do? And that's not the energy you want people to have when making an important decision. You don't want them choosing something out of desperation. And again, I'm not saying that every socialist chose to be a socialist out of desperation. I'm not saying that at all. I don't mean to slander the entire group. I'm just really trying, just because it's becoming so prominent, I just think it's really time to have a serious conversation about socialism. And I don't think it's a scary word, but we need examples of where has this worked? If it hasn't worked, why didn't it work? And can we fix the reasons why it didn't work? Can we make adjustments and actually have it work? Patrick Tuohy, co-founder and policy director of the Better Cities Project, has been critical of the Sunfresh project. He says the store looks great on paper but does not have demand to support it. Plus, he noted the neighborhood has other options because of nearby Aldi store and the independent Happy Food Center. In my head, I'm kind of like, do what you fucking want with it because I'm not shopping at this grocery store anyway. So I guess that's why I wasn't vocally oh, this is a dumb idea, because I'm like, I think it's a dumb idea, but I'm not going to, but I was like, let me be honest with myself. I'm not shopping at a city-run grocery store no matter what, so I don't need to fucking chime in on it at a certain point and take something away from people who might want it, and it might help. Data bears point out both points. A USDA analysis showed the area around the store is low income, but not low access. And a Washington Post analysis of the adjacent zip codes show the area has steadily lost population since 2020. The council member who represents the area, Melissa Patterson Hasley, estimates that there are more than 200 vacant lots in her district. When residents and advocates gathered for an update during a breakfast meeting in late June, a minister spoke of fractured streets and urged everyone to mobilize and reclaim the neighborhood. Pearson had bad news, however. He told the group that KC Sunfresh was again in the red after he used the $750,000 in city aid to pay off outstanding invoices and restock the shelves. So far, and I also wonder, if there's this problem, with turnaround, are the shelves going bare? Are things expiring before they're being bought? You have to think about all that kind of stuff. So far, according to Patterson Hasley, the city's finance director said it has spent about $29 million on the shopping center project. Everyone says, why aren't we doing X, Y, and Z at the store, said Pearson, who has spearheaded other urban revival projects, including another grocery store and a pickleball complex. Oh my God, the pickleball. Well, we recovered the expenses and went negative $39,000, and we're back in the same situation. And there was more, Pearson continued. The store's insurance company had dropped it, and the premiums with a new insurer were 45% higher. The audience gasped. Later that morning, customers trickled into the store, past two armed security guards just inside the entrance, even as two police officers monitored the scene outside. Small groups of people hanging out across the street seemed unbothered by the uniforms or the heat. Taylor, who had come in for tomatoes, left the only one in the bin for someone else and moved on to ingredients for nachos, a Friday night treat for her and her husband. The chip aisle was bare, shelf after shelf empty. She finally found a few bags of tortilla chips nearby. Taylor grew up in the area, and she and her husband raised their two daughters here. The nonprofit consultant remembers the long stretch of time when the strip mall's first grocery store was vacant, and she had to travel several miles to go shopping. After the city bought the property and KC Sunfresh opened, she tried to do everything she could to promote the store, she said. The local neighborhood association, which she leads, launched a campaign called Save Our Store and asked people to sign pledges to shop there monthly. She said it also handed out $10 gift cards. Now she explained, I can't even convince my neighbors to come and shop here anymore. They all say, well, there's nothing there. Hardly any fruit, hardly any chips, no bread other than hamburger buns. It's just such a struggle. We need our grocery store. John Harden contributed to this report. So yeah, that's just a little bit of a look, a little bit of a perspective. I'd be interested to know if you live in a city with a city-owned grocery store, what has the community response been? What are your thoughts on it? Do you shop there yourself? Do you find that it's helped with food inequity? Like, I'm just really curious to hear about it. And thank you so much for Wacko George for sending me that article. Again, if you want to email anything to me, municipal thoughts, city-owned grocery store thoughts, whatever it is that's on your mind that in regards to this show, it's withoutacountrypodcast@gmail.com. Mark your calendars. Los Angeles, Gash will be returning to the Comedy Store on Wednesday, October 22nd. Again, tickets are not on sale yet, but I just like to tell you guys first because I appreciate you. Thanks for being here. Mark it in your calendars, and I'll post it on Instagram when the tickets go live. So I don't know, put your alerts on for my Instagram or something because that's where I will be announcing it when the ticket sale goes live. And again, thank you to our dictator, Christopher Fungi, and all of our amazing cuties and capitalist pigs, or rather capitalist pigs and cuties. And you can follow me on social media at Philanthropy Gal. And AJ, where can they follow you?
You can follow me at AJ Giro Comedy on Instagram.
Okay, perfect. Alfred, where can they follow you? Cute boy at cuteboy.com. Alfred was a terror during this episode, but now he's being a good boy on the couch. I'm sorry, Alfred. I know this was very boring for you and that all the news that you want is about treats. Do you want a new show about treats? Yep, his head went up. Okay. Well, I'll get you one when you get home, buddy. Thank you so much. This has been Without a Country. If you want to join the Patreon, patreon.com/withoutacountry for as little as $6 a month. Remember, the truth is in there. Thanks for being here. Have a good night. Bye.
Running from the